All right, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to episode 99.
Yes.
One less than 100.
Yes. Close, but not.
Everyone's getting close. 98 guy, 99. You guys are all wishing it was 100, but just have to figure out the plan for that. But I want to thank you for coming in. Is second person coming from Kentucky in a row.
Yes.
So thanks for coming up from Fort Knox. And so for episode 9, I am joined by Sergeant First Class Jazmin Ojeda-Hagerty. In your bio, I'll give her real name. So we'll start with the bio like everyone does. So tonight I'm honored to sit down with U.S. Army Sergeant First Class Lesliee, also known as Jazmin Ojeda-Hagerty, a soldier, Gold Star spouse, military mentor, and someone whose life is a testament to resilience, faith, and service. Jazmin was born and raised in Lancaster, California, where she was lovingly raised by her grandparents. Her grandfather, an Army veteran himself, inspired her military journey and remained her biggest supporter throughout her career. She enlisted in the Army in 2002 and served for more than 17 years, deploying during Operation Iraqi Freedom with the 25th Infantry Division and later to Afghanistan with the 296th Brigade Support Battalion. Throughout her career, she served in numerous logistics and leadership roles while continuing her service today in the United States Army Reserve. In 2004, while deployed to Iraq, Jazmin experienced an unimaginable loss when her husband, Sergeant Ramon Ojeda, was killed in action after his convoy was ambushed. Left to raise their young son, she chose to continue serving, not only in uniform, but by dedicating herself to supporting other surviving military families. Today, Jazmin volunteers as a military mentor and group leader for the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, TAPS, supports the Gary Sinise Foundation, and advocates for the military families through initiatives like the Love Lives On Act, which we'll talk about later. She's also a devoted mother, newly remarried to her husband, Tanner, and continues to inspire others through her compassion, resilience, and unwavering service. Tonight, we'll talk about grief, healing, military families, resilience, and how purpose can emerge even after the life's greatest losses. Please join me in welcoming Jazmin to episode 99 of Ports of Patriots.
Hi, so thanks for having me. Yeah. I'm here. I made it.
Yeah, we had to have a reschedule, but it's okay. It's all right. We made it happen. I'm really happy. We almost had another car problem, but
oh gosh,
it was resolved. So we'll start off the quote before we get into your story. So the continued bond to be able to stay connected with your loved one, whether it is on an online tribute or it's in your own home where you've had their flag and their memorabilia, it's that continuing bond with a person that is important. That is an important marker, and that's from Audrey Bagelsdijk. And she's a member of, I think, if I'm not correct, I think TAPS is where I got it from. So just a quote about, she talks about her bond with, how she stayed connected with losing her spouse. So we'll talk about that whenever you feel like it.
That's okay. Yeah.
So let's talk about growing up in California, raised by the grandparents.
Yes. So I was born and raised in California. I've always been close to my mother. My mother is actually, we lived together for the first couple of years of my life. So we started off in Northridge. My grandfather served in the Army, and then he got a job at the VA as a nurse. So they decided to stay in Northridge, California. And after once I was getting ready to start school, they moved us to Lancaster. They just thought it'd be a better way to, it was an upcoming little small town, and Northridge wasn't really where they wanted to raise me. So I stayed with my grandparents, and my mother came to live with us too. And after 6 years, my mom remarried, and I stayed with my grandparents. But my mother always, she'd always come on the weekends because she was a workaholic. I think that's also where I get my work ethic from, is my mom. I don't really have a relationship with my dad. I know who he is, but he left a couple of days after I was born. So my mom and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles, they worked together to raise me and keep me alive the first couple of years of my life. And after the Northridge earthquake, my mom moved closer, and I have a brother and a sister as she remarried, and I'm pretty close to them. They all still live in California.
So growing up, with dad being out of the picture, and then living with the grandparents, and then mom coming back into the picture, and then leaving again. What was that like for you as a young child? I mean, was it too young for you to remember, or is it something that you can still recall?
No, I do recall living with my mom. So she would volunteer at my school. I was in the preschool that I was in, and she was always there on the weekends and or whenever she could. I remember always when she did remarry, I was there at the wedding, and I remember I didn't really know what was going on because I thought I was going to go live with my mom. And a couple, years later, I realized like I really kind of resented that I wasn't living with my mom. Because I was like, I didn't understand that she had, I was like, well, why wouldn't she take me with her? But my grandparents made the decision that at that time it was better for me to stay where I was at. And my mom, since she was a present person in my life, and then what my mom went through after with my stepdad, it was probably an environment that I didn't really would have thrived in. So I think looking back, I think that my grandparents made the best decision. But I always felt like especially when my brother and my sister were born, I felt like, well, why can't they take me? Like, why do I have to live with my grandparents? So I resented my mom for a couple years, and I just didn't understand. As a kid, you don't understand it. You're like, well, how come I can't go live with my mom? And when she moved to closer to Lancaster, she was living down the street, and I still couldn't go live with her. And I was like, why? So we've talked about it, and as we grow up, we see the things that happen in different households, and you're like, you know what, maybe that was for the best. She's a much stronger person now, and we have a much better relationship. But for a couple of years there, we didn't talk. But I love my mom. She's definitely came a long way in her own journey. And what I also didn't realize growing up was that my grandmother had lost her first husband. He served in the Salvadorian army, and she lost him really young. So growing up in a family that didn't really talk about grief, but was going through grief, really I didn't understand it. Like, I grew up where we didn't talk about it. We just kind of kept our feelings. And my grandma was such a strong person that, she did really well with, I would say masking her emotions. So I was like, man, she's so strong. And I know we'll talk about it later, but when Ray passed away, I was sitting in the limo getting ready to go to when we were going to bury the burial. And I look at my grandma and I'm like, oh my God, like, she went through this when she was as young as me. So it kind of changed my perspective. But growing up, it was really hard for me to understand why my mom couldn't live with my mom. Did you know that happened with your grandmother, or did you not learn that till you were older? No, we knew because my grandmother had my grandpa's. His name's Carlos. Yeah, his name's Carlos. She had his pictures, but she would talk about him in like the sense of like, grandpa or my mom's dad. But that was pretty much it. And we knew that she had been married before. But my grandfather that she found when she remarried, he was amazing. He was just, all you could think about was the grandpa you had. You didn't really know growing up. You didn't know the grandpa you didn't have. So that was we knew that there was somebody else, that she had suffered a loss. But since we didn't talk about it, we didn't know how much that loss affected us growing up in that house, or how much everyone was just bottling in throughout the years. So I really appreciate you sharing this. I know it's not easy to do that. So I thank you for doing that and having the courage to keep talking about this. Did your mom like know her dad, or did she? Yes. Did he? So she knew. Yes. She was suffering the loss as well, just like they were young. Yes, they were young. And then they were really young when he passed away. But my grandma has 4 kids, and all 4 kids, they're aware of what happened. I think my youngest aunt, she probably was too young to remember anything, but my mom and my uncles definitely were old enough. My mom is she's not the oldest, she's the second oldest. Sorry. Yeah. So they definitely knew what was going on, but they didn't know. We didn't talk about therapy. We didn't talk about going to talk to anybody. We just turned to faith. Yeah. So looking back, like obviously, what you went through in 2004, like, and where you're at now, can you look back and see that, that's what it was, just a family that was
suffering a lot of grief, that had these, these things they weren't talking about, that was kind of always in the background? I mean, were we able to kind of like, is that
where I'm at now?
Did that make some explanation? Did that explain some of the things that were going on? Or
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Even some of the behaviors, like my mom, with my mom, just not having that good father figure, and the relationship that her and my dad had. Like, I think she was just trying to find somebody to love her. And with my uncles, some of the decisions that they probably made, looking back, it probably was just because they were hurt. They were going through their own grief.
Yeah.
And my grandma, she just kind of shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with all that going on, what was the young Jazmin like? What were you into as a growing up?
I was a tomboy. I wanted to be. I played soccer. I got dirty. I was roller skating. I would, I grew up in a house with my cousins. So at one point there was 5 people living in one room. That was my uncle, my aunt, my uncle, and the 3 kids, and it was fun. We'd go skating, biking, and we didn't have to worry about a lot of things. And as long as we were in the sight of a parent, then we were fine to stay there. Like we couldn't go far. And my grandma was very protective, very strict we couldn't go to friends' houses. We couldn't spend the night places. But we were allowed to hang out with each other. And since there was 4 or 5 of us, we never were bored. We'd lay out on the driveway and just look at the stars sometimes. It was fun.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that, because my mom wasn't a big fan of letting me spend the night either. It's one of the strangest things. No. And I remember having, the only sleepover I ever remember having was when I had a birthday party.
Yeah.
And but like, it wasn't really common for that to happen. I've always wondered, maybe I'll ask my dad after what the big deal was about that, but it just didn't seem like it was a very common thing either.
No, it wasn't. And I think it was, you really didn't know, she really didn't know the people that were your friends. She really didn't know their parents. And
yeah.
So I think she was just protecting.
Yeah, because I look back at it now too, because I was like, oh man, like, because if you remember, it causes a lot of, like, as you're a young kid and you're you can't do it, it's a big deal. Like, why can't I do this? And everybody else is doing it. So then, especially I'm a little bit older than you are, so maybe a lot older, but but that was like when everybody was hanging out, like you'd be the only kid that was left out. So it was like you're missing something. And I do look back at the same way now, as I think it was just like not knowing who just a way of protecting, like what,
yeah,
not knowing who they are, like what really happens, because that's really truth. Like my family didn't know, because like behind closed doors, when everybody's around, like people act differently and things happen. So it's like, maybe it was just, her way of somehow protecting,
Yeah. So when I got to high school, I wasn't allowed to play sports until my cousin was a year behind me. And then once he started high school, he was a freshman, I was a sophomore. Then I played soccer for school. Then I was able to go to prom, and I was able to go to homecoming, and I was able to go places because he would go with me. And he was younger than me.
But you had somebody in the family watching over you.
Yes.
That's probably things. So you said your grandfather was in the Army, so he was working the VA. So when did you think you started getting the bug of you might want to join the Army?
So I think it was a double. It was watching. I mean, he worked night shift, and he'd drive an hour away, and he would sit down every morning. No matter, I can't even remember when, he would he'd sit down with the newspaper at the kitchen table and go through the front page and just talk about it. And my grandma probably wouldn't listen. She'd just be like, oh, here he goes again. But you listen to the stories, and then he would be very, 4th of July, Memorial Day, the flag would be out no matter what. So I think watching him do that and just being like, listening to his stories and how he enjoyed the short time that he had in the service, because he only did his first commitment. It really kind of got me curious as to like what I can do, because I think I wanted to just do something bigger than what my life was, because I felt like in high school, like I couldn't fit in. I kept trying to find a place to fit in, and I was like, well, maybe this will work. And I knew I didn't want to go to school right away. I didn't want my grandma to worry about how's she going to pay for college. And I'm not going to lie, I tried the first semester. It did not go well. So right out of college.
99 episodes. There's a lot of people who have the same story.
Yes. So I went through to the recruiter and I joined without really telling my grandma what I was doing. And I came home because I was 18. And I came home and I told her, and I don't think she realized like what was going on until the recruiter came to pick me up that morning really early to go to MEPS and to do all the in-processing. And that was the first time that I actually, like, I saw my grandma cry. And in my mind, I was like, am I doing something wrong? Because I've never seen her cry. And so it was, there's been a couple times after that I've maybe seen her cry, but that was probably the first time. And I was like, I questioned my decision, but I didn't look back, and I went through. And I have always said, like, both of my grandfathers definitely had a big part in like me wanting to serve.
So you mentioned not fitting in. What do you want to elaborate more on that?
I think it was from my insecurities from even just starting, like you said, like you mentioned, with my parents being separated. A lot of my friends, their parents were together. You know, they had siblings that lived with them. I always felt like maybe I was trying too hard. And since I wasn't able to go places, I also was left out for that reason. And then with my first name, Lesliee, I got teased a lot. So I had friends, looking like, you know, they're friends now, but back then it was like they would tease me about my first name. And so I thought it was funny, but then you're like, this is not really funny. They're just picking on me. So I think that was the biggest thing. I had really low self-esteem, and a lot of that came from, like, I didn't understand why my mom and dad, like, why couldn't they just stay together? And, you know, looking back, you kind of understand things happen, but I definitely had a hard time with fitting in.
The more I talk to people about that stuff, and then and I'm honest about myself, is I think a lot of people, most people aren't fitting in, and they feel the same way that you felt. So it's so powerful to hear people tell the truth about what it is, because everybody always talks about high school being like the greatest thing and all these kind of things. And I just remember being an Army brat, of trying to be a chameleon, trying to fit in, right? Also at the same time, keeping my distance because I didn't know when my dad could be moving again. So it was like, and then you just trying to just fit in with someone that, you know, I feel the same way. Like I think a lot of people do, but like it may seem like, I think seems like everybody has it together, but I don't know many, like, you know, 15 to 18-year-olds that really have it going on. But like, we just pretend, like everyone's like pretending. I feel like that's like everything's great, you know, because, you know, no one's life is good. But I mean, I appreciate you saying that, because that's how I felt too. Is I was like, yeah, I was like reaching and just grabbing at anything to be like accepted and like and have friends and it's just, it is you know, when I think about it, that was, you know, one of the reasons why I think it was also easy for me to leave, to just say it's time to go into the military. And you know, when you bring that up, I've never really thought about that too, because it was easy, because I'd really, you know, I probably had like 2 or 3 close friends that I thought, but it was like, yeah, I don't really have, you know, this huge connection. I didn't grow up with, you know, people. I mean, the only difference would be, you know, I didn't have a big family either, you know, or that was close or anything like that. But, and I just had my sister and my mom and my dad and like 2 or 3 other friends. So it was like, yeah, let's go fit in somewhere else, right? Let's go fit in a different place. You know, correct. That's kind of how. But I really appreciate you being honest with that, because I thought, you know, a lot of people, I think they all felt the same way you felt in high school. At least I did. Yeah,
it was one day when I realized that people are just, you know, girls are mean, and it was they were like, oh, let's see who has the prettiest dress. And, you know, I was like, oh, this is like, I need to go find a dress. And then I'm the only one that showed up the next day in a dress. And everyone else was like, they were laughing. And I was like, that was not nice. Like, you know, I felt that was right before I started middle school. So definitely that kind of set the path for me to go find friends that I probably shouldn't have been hanging out with, because I was like, okay, well, I tried, you know, hanging out with the good kids, or the kids that weren't getting in trouble. Maybe, you know, maybe that wasn't working. But yeah, that was kind of one of those, like, it was a competition, but then you know, you're the only one really competing, and it's really not, they're just trying to see kind of a reason to laugh. And it was kind of mean, but it's kind of just went home and never hung out with them again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no matter what you hear, I mean, I'd say it's a little different with like cyberbullying and like how easy to do it, but like it wasn't easy.
No.
I try to tell my kids, well, I think high school's never been easy. There's always mean kids,
No, they just haven't.
There's a Mean Girls movie, but not Mean Boys movie. Maybe that's the movie we need to do.
There you go.
There's plenty of other movies I think show how awful
Yeah.
adolescent males are to each other. But so you talked about your grandmother when you finally enlisted. Like, what did Grandpa have to say about it?
He was so excited. He was excited, and he would always tell me, "Don't take any crap for anybody." He'd say, "Don't take any wooden nickels." That was his way of not cussing. And till the day he passed, that I will remember that, because he'd just be like, no matter what you go through, like, don't take any shit from anybody, pretty much. And but he was proud in every promotion, every graduation. My mom, my grandparents, my siblings, they were all there. Like my grandma and my grandpa were the ones that pinned me for my any promotion, that I had. They would fly out and they would be there all day. So when I made E7, when I made Sergeant First Class, I just kind of put it on because there was nobody there, and they're like, "You're not gonna have a ceremony?" I was like, "No, it's okay."
Yeah.
Because I had gotten used to my grandparents being there and my grandpa being the one to pin me. And I think one of the ceremonies, one of my youngest, he had pinned me. So I was like, nobody's here right now. I'm just gonna throw it on.
Yeah. So where's the first duty assignment after AIT?
Ooh, I went to Kansas. Sorry, I forgot that. Yes, I went to Kansas. So I was at Fort Lee, Virginia, because I was doing automated logistics school, and I had the idea that I've always wanted to do airborne school. And during that time, there were so many soldiers that wanted to do airborne school that there was a wait list. So I noticed that I was like, well, I had it in my contract, and I was supposed to go to Bragg. And then right when it was getting ready, time to graduate AIT, they were like, well, if you still want to, there's a way to get out of being a holdover pretty much and waiting for airborne school. And I was like, sign me up, get me out of here. I didn't realize I was pretty much signing the rest of my career to be able to like struggle to get into airborne school. And I regret that. That was one of my decisions that I regretted. But I was young and I wanted to get out of Fort Lee. I wanted to get out of training. I had already. And so I ended up, instead of going to Fort Bragg, I ended up in Fort Riley, Kansas.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you made a bad decision, but I'll give you a hard time about that one. But
I did. I did, but I didn't, because that's where I met Ray.
But what people don't know, though, is if the listeners, like the Army or the military, they have contracts, but they have ways. You can't get out of the contract per se, but they have ways to get you out of the contract. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing more motivating than when you're in a place you don't want to be, for them to not hold up to their end of the bargain. Like, and most people would say, well, gosh, if you had it before, they're definitely going to give it to you later on. That's not how it works. It's like you have to. Yeah, that's one of the things that people don't realize. It's like, oh yeah, just you have to be like, hey, if you want to go to airborne school, you be a holdover for 4 months, because that's the only way you're going to airborne school probably again.
And and watching them like all day, all they did was just run, clean, and I think, and looking back, if I would have went to Fort Bragg, it definitely would have. I wouldn't have met Ray. My whole life, I would have probably been on the first deployment out, because that would have been 2003. Mm-hmm. So definitely, I ended up at Fort Riley, Kansas, right before the winter hit. So
you were at Riley for how long?
A year and a half, I want to say. Okay. Long enough for my son to turn 3 months old and leave.
Okay.
So I got to Fort Riley in October, and I was in an engineer unit, so we were tasked with cleaning up the roads during the winter. So that was fun, and that's when I realized you can run in the snow, you can't run on ice. Yeah. So I think I fell a couple times down the stairs, just because I wasn't used to. I was from the desert. I wasn't used to the snow. But yeah, Fort Riley, Kansas. That was my first unit.
So that's where you met Ray then?
Yeah. So Funny story is, I got there in process, and there's this really Chevy S10 like lower truck, and I was like, whose truck is that? And they're like, oh, that's Ojeda. He's on leave, but we have his keys. And I was like, oh, I want to drive it. And I ended up driving his truck, and before I even met him. So when he got back, he found out that I had drove his truck, and he was like, "Who let you drive my truck?" And I was like, "Oh, they said I could drive it, so I drove it." And that's how we met. Like, we met by him coming to ask me, like, who gave you permission to, but yeah, so that's where I met Ray, and he was the jokester. And as soon as everybody was like, "Stay away from Ojeda, he's trouble," and I was like, "What do you mean? He's funny. Like, he's funny, and he pushes the line. Like, he's clean cut, and always has his uniform pressed, but his mouth would get him in trouble." Like most of us. But yeah, that's where that's how we met. When he came back off leave, he came looking for me.
So how long will you guys date before you get married and have a kid, or have a kid and then get married, however it went?
So I called my grandma, and I don't think that was not the call she was looking to receive. Because you send your kid off and you're like, oh, they're gonna be fine. And I tell my kids sometimes, I was like, I think because I grew up in, like, I was so used to my grandma telling me what to do. I was so used to, like, having somebody kind of tell me where I was going and everything. I went into the military, and I still had that, like, I need to find a person. And so we got married we got married a couple months after. Sorry, let me go back. I found out I was pregnant, but it wasn't planned. I tell Angel all the time, I was like, "No, you were planned."
Yeah.
He's like, "But you guys were young." I said, "I didn't say we were smart. I said you were." Like, we talked about it, and it probably was not the best decision, but here you are. And he was like, "Well, what about this?" I said, "Look, I'm just letting you know, it wasn't like you were an oops."
Yeah.
And he laughs about that. And then after I told my family, Ray went to Hawaii. So he had PCS to Hawaii, and I couldn't leave. So I waited. We got married in Hawaii. I flew there before I gave birth. And then I came back, gave birth to Angel, stayed at Fort Riley until he was 3 months old. And then I PCS to Hawaii as well. So I'm from Kansas to Hawaii.
Improvement, I think. Big improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, let's talk about that, because that's people. I mean, you just say, like, I love when people that are military people, that stuff just rolls off their tongue so easy. Like, yeah, I was pregnant. I just flew there. We got married, went back, had the baby while my husband's in Hawaii. Like, I just want to say again, that's not easy. You say it so calmly, like it's not be done. And I've found that, talking to, many people that I've talked to and seen it, I feel like it's even worse when you're the mom. I feel like and that's not, I'm not like,
absolutely.
I think it's harder when you're like doing this on your own. You're in the military. Yes. I can't even imagine, because I would be like, cool, I'm in Hawaii. My wife and my kid are back in Fort Riley. I'm doing my thing.
Oh no, it was definitely not a decision that was easy. I mean, I was scared. I was young. I knew my grandmother and my family weren't very happy with the decision. But at the same time, they eventually came around, and they supported us, and they had, so I actually, they met Ray because we went on leave before that, like when we were dating. So they met him, and because he was from San Diego, California, and I was from Lancaster, so it was about 2.5-hour drive. So I took him, and I was like, "Hey, you have to meet my family." And this is before, I was pregnant. I want to say I found out after that. So they knew who he was, and it wasn't an easy decision, because I had to go back to Fort Riley, and I didn't really have I had a support system, but when you're a soldier living in the barracks, they give you a timeline, and they're like, okay, you have to move out by this timeline. So I'm living off posts in the winter by myself, and I don't have a vehicle because we hadn't purchased a vehicle. He took the vehicle, or the truck. And so I had a really good support system with my platoon sergeant and a couple other people. They would bring me food. They'd come and pick me up for work until I was able to get a car. So it was not an easy decision. I mean, it's one of those things that you're in the moment, and you're like, okay, maybe this is a good decision. And looking back, you're like, man, I survived that.
So how old were you then?
I was 19.
Yeah. No, I I'm almost like speechless about like because it's not like you're not the only person. This is like not that, but this is one of the things I think that a lot of people don't talk about the whole military experience. It's like the Army isn't really, their job isn't really to get you guys together. That's what people don't realize. People are like, oh my gosh, you the dads in the Army, they'll all be together. That's just really not how it is. I mean, it wasn't back then. It was like, hey, you still got it. He's got to go. He's got a job to do. You got a job to do. It'll when it works out. If it works out, it'll work out.
Right, and that was that was the mentality, especially during the early parts of the 2000s. We knew we were going to get married, but what if we wouldn't have? I'd be a single parent in Fort Riley, and he'd be in Hawaii because there's no reason for the military to move us. So definitely, it is very hard to be dual military.
Yeah, I mean, especially at 19 years old. I mean, there's like a lot of things that are going on. I think there's that whole craziness of, and on top of that, and we'll talk more about this, there's a war going on,
right?
There's a possibility that either one of you can go. But I mean, there's just a lot of things that are going on. I'm glad to hear that your chain of command like took care of you. But it just is one of those things I look back and you hear these stories and you just say it so calmly, like this is just how it was, but it's really not how what happens to a lot of couples and mothers when they're 19 years old. I mean, I think there's a lot of these thoughts that people have, like, oh, the military would just say, hey, get you guys together, he doesn't have to leave. They're like, it's
not like that.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's like they don't care. I mean, there's a part of it that they don't care, and that's so being like a young 19 years old, this happened to you. Like, are you starting to resent the military at all at this point? Like, are you still kind of like, I'm just going with what's being thrown at me? Are you like starting to get a little like?
No, I don't think I thought about it as, oh, this is what they're doing to us. I just was like, this is how this, because I came from a very strict family. And I think I just rolled with the punches. In many ways that I probably that kind of in a way kind of shaped my grief journey early on, where I just kind of, oh, this is happening. Like, I have to figure out how to get through this. So my mom actually came, she got on the train before Angel was born, and she came to Kansas, and she was there with my sister. So we spent Christmas together, and so she traveled. And my grandmother, they all traveled to Kansas to be there with me. So my family has always been very supportive and travel wherever I go. So that also helped to have a family that was willing to travel, whether it was train or plane. Now she gets on a plane, she won't get on the train. The train,
you'll love that. So how long before you said how many months before you head out to Hawaii to be with Ray?
So Angel was born in March, and then I want to say we PCS before the summer started. So I get out there, and his chain of command, like, he's got an amazing, one of my really good friends after Eugene, he was there to welcome us with open arms too. He's actually Angel's godfather. And so when we got there, they already knew we were coming. Like, his unit was supportive. And we learned very quickly that Hawaii was expensive for 2 E4 and below. Regardless of, like, when there was family assistance, you make too much. Like, you make just a couple dollars more than we can't, and it was so expensive. So we made it. We survived.
So what was it like reuniting with Ray after being at Leavenworth and then having Angel by yourself? I mean,
he was amazing. Ray was so good with. I mean, he just enjoyed every part about being a dad. He would put Angel in a basket and roll him around the laundry basket and roll him around the house. And he was just, he wanted to spend all his time with Angel. And what I told Angel years after was that Ray went through his own battles right before Angel was born. So he was clean and sober. Like, he was, and I think that also helped because he was just focused on just being a dad, because alcohol and other things. Because his first duty station was Korea. So at 18 years old, they sent him to Korea, and then they sent him to Kansas, and then in Hawaii, he kind of went through his own battles. But by the time Angel was born, he had quit smoking. He didn't drink, and he was very proud of that as well, because he wanted to be the best he could for his son. So he loved it. It was amazing. And I went to the field right away. As soon as I got there, we went to what we called PTA, because I was in an aviation unit. So we would go away for a couple weeks, and I came back, and they were just like they'd never been apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long before you guys are together before Ray deploys?
So we both deployed around the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. Angel was 7 months old. So we got to Hawaii, and as soon as I got to Hawaii to my unit, there was already talks of which aviation unit was going to go to Iraq, which aviation unit was going to go to Afghanistan. I was in a Kiowa unit, a Little Bird. They've retired those, but so originally we were supposed to go to Afghanistan, but we ended up in Iraq. And then Ray's unit was an engineer unit. They also ended up in Iraq. I left first. Yes, I left. We left right after. So we spent Christmas and New Year's in Hawaii. And then right after that, we both deployed, like a couple weeks separated apart. So January of 2004, we were already in Iraq.
So you left first then. So what was it like leaving
Ray
and, of course, Angel, like with what was going through your mind at that point?
So we knew when we told my grandmother we were going to decide I think we were so young, we really didn't think about what if we don't come back. I could tell you, that thought did not cross my mind. I don't think it crossed Ray's mind, because I haven't verified this, but a lot of the information I got was that he had signed a waiver to leave because I was leaving. He wasn't supposed to go. So that I found that out years after he passed. So that definitely weighed on me for a long time. I mean, still, I kind of had to like put that and be like, you know what, he did that, and I would have done the same probably. But we didn't really think about it. We didn't think, like, we were just so excited to come back on mid-tour. So I selfishly was like, okay, well, if Angel goes with your parents first, then that means when we come home for mid-tour, then we can go to my house first. And so he went, Angel went with Ray's parents for the plan was for him to go for the first 6 months with Ray's parents, and then the second 6 months with my parents. So then when we came home, he would be with my grandparents. And so to answer your question, I don't think we really thought about it. We thought we were doing what we signed up for, and we were going out to, serve our country. And we were told you're deploying, and that's get ready, and that's what you're doing. And we prepared. My grandma came, and she picked up Angel, and she flew back home. And that was the beginning of like our whole new life, because we never went back to that house. We packed up our stuff. We put our cars in storage. And so I don't think we ever thought of like, hey, what if we don't come back? You're 20, yeah. You're 20 and 21, and you're not really you're just thinking about coming back.
Yeah, you're mortal. But what was it like leaving I mean, I know you thought you were coming back. What was it like leaving the baby though? Was it an Angel, or was it kind of just?
It was exciting
because I know for me, I mean, people don't understand this, but there's a part of you that like.
That knew he was going to be fine.
That you're just excited about to go do your job. It's hard to explain. Like, I mean, it's not like, especially during that time, it's like, I'm going to war. I'm going to avenge something I believe in. I'm going to do this. So there's a part of me that like, I don't really remember having like a lot of like remorse or like, or being very like torn up that I was leaving, because I had Nate, my middle son, who was pretty young at the time. I spent a lot of time with him. There was like times that I did like just make sure I was with him. Right.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like overly like consumed by that. It was more like this forward looking. It was like, okay, this is like, but I had my wife wasn't in the military, so I knew that was going to be taken care of. Someone's going to be taken care of. I'm just going to go do my job. And I guess when I think about that, because I was hoping you would, you would have a different look at it, but I don't think a lot of us do really. It's kind of how we are. We think about it, but it's kind of in the background. And for me, there was a long time in my life that ate me up a lot, because I, like, how did I not
think about it.
How did I not how did I not process it? How did I not
Well, I think
do something differently? I mean, I don't know what it would be, but I just felt like I was like, man, I really chose. I would have left hands down 100 out of 100 times. I would not have, if I had a way to get out.
Yes.
I wouldn't have taken it. I would have just left it the way it was. And there's a part of me that was guilty about that because I'm leaving, potentially, leaving them for the rest of my life.
And even looking back, I could tell you that if Ray, Ray was, even in his bio when he passed, even his sisters, everybody says like he knew where he was, he loved what he did. He wanted to serve as a kid. He always wanted to serve. And both of us were the same way. We both wanted to serve. And do I do things differently now that I have that Christian is old enough where if I make a decision that's going to ruin his stability, now I do that. But back then I knew my family was there. I knew my son was safe. And I was, like you said, going to do something. This is what we're doing. And a weirdly excitement, right? Because I was standing up there on the 50 cal when we were getting ready to move from Biop to Taji, and they put me on the 50 cal, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, what if this thing does not go off? What if this thing jams? And my saving grace was we knew that we had a helicopter, the helicopter's over us. But even then you're just like you said, you don't really, you think you're immortal. You think you're invincible.
Nothing can happen to me.
But I do remember standing up on that 50 cal and I was like, what if this thing doesn't work? What if I have to use it? I was like, I know how to use it, but what if I have to? Like, what if something happens? But all those thoughts are racing through your mind. And then as soon as that vehicle that you take off, you're just like, I have to focus. Like, I have to be focused on what's going on, knowing that your family's safe at home. So is it selfish? I can't, I would, that's an argument that definitely.
Yeah, I don't know if it's selfish because it's the best decision I have it now that it's like I made the best decision I could with what I knew at the time, what I mean? And what I mean by the time is how I was as a person, what I was able to process, as a husband, as a father, as a man, as an officer in the Army. So I just, of course now I think of it differently, but back then I didn't know any better. I mean, I didn't know any different. I mean, I made the best, I thought I was making the best decision for myself and for my family.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's the way it is all the time, but I mean, and I think it become, I'm fortunate to come back with, all my limbs, and, unlike Ray and a lot of other people, so it could be different from them, but I always have it that, when I struggle with this is like, the first thing that I thought was like, when you told me about Ray signing the waiver is like, there's a part of me that's like, what the fuck is wrong with, like, I mean, I'm thinking about mine, like, were you mad at him? That's what I wanted to ask you. Were you mad at him when you found that out?
Oh, I mean, there was a couple of times I was mad.
Yeah.
I mean, when I found that out, when I also found out that that wasn't the first time his convoy had been hit. He later on, one of the officers in his unit a couple years ago sent me a picture. He was standing in front of the fuel tank, and that was probably the first convoy that they had gotten hit. And he took a picture in front of the fuel tank with the, and I was like, wow, if he would have shown, like, obviously he wouldn't have shown me that picture then, but I was like, goodness, like, and the communication was different. The ways of communicating were different. We didn't have, I think we were using AOL. And we were using the phone cards and stuff like that. So it wasn't like we were picking up the phone and hearing each other's voice every day. So he was he wasn't having to tell me things or like, but I can hear in his voice that things were happening. And I mean, I was in country too. And on BIOP, I mean, we had on the airfield, there was definitely things going on that I wasn't even, we were not supposed to be telling, but I knew if I was going through it, he was going through it. But definitely I was a little upset because I was like, well, I mean, I still would have had to go, but maybe, you always think, well, maybe things would have been different. But when I tell you, like, when they were on that convoy, how it happened, it still makes me like, well, it could have been different, but it seems like the way things fell, it was, I don't know, his angels were around him, but at the same time, it was like he was in the vehicle. And I mean, we could talk about it later, but he was in the vehicle. He was in the vehicle with his platoon sergeant, and that vehicle broke down. And then they ended up separating, and they were in different vehicles. And they were at the end of the ambush. They were the only 2 casualties. So when you hear that, and you hear the waiver, you're just like, oh my gosh, like what, you know? And then you hear it in his voice. Before that night, before he went out on that convoy, I think the night before they called the talk, or he called, and he was just like, tell Angel I love him. And I was like, you're gonna tell him? Like what are you talking about? So my grandma's very spiritual, and she's like, I think he knew something. He felt something that wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's been times I've been upset at him.
Yeah, because I think about it, because I had a friend of mine that made a decision to go do something, Mike Green, and he volunteered for something early, because I think what people don't understand either is like no one thought these wars were going to last 21 years.
Absolutely
both of them. So there like what people don't understand is like there was an urge, there was a desire, there was a motivation for people to go into theater. Like people were like, and it's crazy. People wanting to get badged up and getting, combat patches. That's and then, there are people that were just doing it because that, this could be our generation's war. How long is it going to last? You know what I mean? And that's a sad thing to think about, but that's how a lot of people were.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about that, when I think about Mike, I always get pissed off, because like, dude, he would have had 20 some years to, maybe 16 more years to figure it out. The same thing with but you can't be mad at, I can't be mad at him anymore, because I probably would have done the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, there's no way I was signing a waiver not to go do something. So there's all these things that you can, I just know that they probably felt the same way that I did, and they just wanted to do their job. And fortunately for, us, we came back, other people, they didn't, like Ray. And that's just the way it is.
And there was no way Ray was going to stay behind while his wife was going overseas.
Yeah.
So that wasn't an option for him either, because he grew up very family oriented too, and he was an amazing husband and father. But that was one thing he wasn't gonna let his wife go into.
So are you ready to talk about that?
Yeah, we'll get.
So let's talk about it. He was on a convoy.
They were at Ray's mission in Afghanistan, or in Iraq, was they would escort that night. They were escorting a National Guard unit. And I might be a little foggy on the details, but they were escorting a National Guard unit because they were going to take over the vehicles. Because back then we drove in with vehicles. It wasn't like they were flying us from place to place. So he was on a convoy to Kuwait, or they were on a convoy to return vehicle to escort the National Guard unit, and then they were going to drive those vehicles back. We had a curfew. We weren't supposed to be on the road at certain times. From my understanding, from my reading statements, and from people telling me their versions of the story, what I gathered is at one point they got lost and they went into a city, and so backtrack, sorry. Before they did that, Ray was always the kind of guy, like he would take candy, he would take anything. And he was the kid like throwing out candy for the trucks and like the kids that were hanging out on the side of the road, throwing candy out. So for him, it was just like, he was giving candy. Like he didn't see a difference in like, oh, these are, other people's kids or a different country. And so the contact track that he was in, because he was a mechanic, he's a heavy wheeled construction equipment mechanic. They were in the vehicle and it broke down. So him and Staff Sergeant Medina were in the vehicle, and then when that vehicle broke down, Ray went to the rear of the convoy, Sergeant Medina went to the front of the convoy, and then so they continued on. They were supposed to stop in Taji, because Taji was a field point at that time, and that's where so I was looking forward to seeing him because that's where I was at. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to worry about. Like he's gonna, you're still like, he's gonna show up. And then I heard from him the night before they left for the convoy, and I went to sleep, didn't think anything of it. I got woken up. I'm sorry, it's kind of foggy. I called my in-laws at night. The next morning, I was doing like parts run with one of my clerks, and somebody ran up to me and they're like, you need to go see the commander. And I was like, what do you mean I need to go see the commander? Like, and I look at the clerk and I was like, what did you do? And he's like, nothing. And I was like, well, now we have to go see the commander. So I was, had my weapon, had my Kevlar, my ACH on. So I'm walking in there, and they took my weapon, and they were like, oh, go have a seat in that room. And my battalion commander was in there. And I was like, what did I do? What is going on? I thought I was in trouble. And then I sit down, and they were like, your husband. And I could, till this day, I could tell you, I don't remember what he said after that. All I remember is he said, your husband was injured. And then I just, like, I still don't know what happened. So during the ambush, Ray sustained 2 injuries. The first one was to his leg, and he was on the 50 cal, but back then we didn't have like the coverage. So he was just open on a 50 cal, maybe sandbags on the Humvee. And he was just out there, and he got, then the second injury was, is by a sniper, and it was to his neck. And he bled out. But they didn't realize it. So at this time, also, Sergeant Medina was also injured. So they exit the city, they stop. The medic tries to do stop the bleeding. And, the medic tried. And I mean, at this point, all they saw was that when they came out of the city, Ray was draped, his body was draped over the 50 cal, and they were trying to wake him up, like trying to get him up. And then Sergeant Medina, they couldn't revive him either. I mean, he was bleeding out as well because both of them sustained injuries. And then they ended up going into a town, got help. But the next day, I was flown into Kuwait. And when the guys got to Kuwait, because they still had to do the mission, I mean, they still had to do drop-off trucks. The guys that were with him on that convoy, they came to see me. And do you know what the first thing I told them? I was like, how are you guys doing? Because at that point, it was not, to me, I was numb. I saw them. I knew they were covered in dirt. And I still did not realize, like, this is happening. Like right now, I'm sitting in Kuwait on the way, like, home. So, yeah, that's, I mean, there's more, but it was hard to look back and say, like, all I could think about was what they were going through, but not realizing what I was getting ready to go through. And before I left to go to Kuwait, my commander was like, you have options. You can go home. We can send you home, or you can escort your husband's remains. And I was like, there was no pause. Like, I am gonna escort his, their remains, because he would have done that for me. So I waited in Kuwait until everything was ready, and then I flew home with. It wasn't just him and Sergeant Medina. It was like May 1st, 2004. So there was, I want to say, I counted 6 or 7 other soldiers that had passed during that weekend. Or during that week. And just when they opened the truck up, I was like, what in the, I didn't know which one he was. I knew which coffin was Sergeant Medina's, because he was a big guy. So when they struggled to pick him up, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Oscar. And I got on the plane, and I still didn't register. I called his parents, because they were like, do you want to call his parents, or do you want us to? I mean, they still sent somebody. But I called his parents, and they sent me home, and we stopped in Dover, and I just sat on the plane. And then when I got home, when I got to when I got to LAX, my mom and my grandma were waiting for me. It still didn't dawn on me. Like, I knew something had happened. My brain was protecting itself. My heart was protecting itself. We got in a car and we drove to San Diego. And as soon as I saw Angel's face, sorry, is when I knew
I apologize.
Yeah, when I saw Angel's face, I was like, this is it. Because I knew if I was there and Ray wasn't, then it was because something had happened. Because we had a plan to come home together. So that was my first time like realizing that he's not coming back. Even we hadn't had a funeral, we hadn't done anything, but seeing my son, he was 14 months old. So 7 months later, from the time we deployed, well, yeah, almost 7 months. That's when I realized I was like, this is real. Like this is happening. And that was from, it's one of my most vivid memories is driving up to my in-laws' house and Angel, running up and hugging me, and he has no clue what's going on.
Yeah.
He just celebrated a birthday not too long before that. He turned a year old in March. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that's not easy to share.
No, it gets easier through the years, but it never gets easier to tell, but it never changes,
What happened now? So, I going through the grief and all this kind of stuff. When did, you start understanding what's happening? Like what's going on in your mind with that? I know you got probably like an anxious little 14-month-old is super excited to see mom.
Yeah.
At the same time, you've got to, bury your husband and go through all that. Like what was keeping you together and all that when it finally, broke through that this is what my life looks like.
The first time was my son, of course, knowing that he only has me. And then, Ray was the only boy. He had sisters, but he was the only boy. So his family, they grieved in a different way. Like their reaction was more along the lines of they wanted to keep Angel, or and this is their grief right after it happened. And I was like, no, like he's like, I'm like, how I would never. So I went back home and I took some leave. And during the funeral, during everything, my mom was there with me, my grandma was there with me, and my casualty assistance officer was there. But like I said, my grandmother, watching her sit across from me in that limo, I think that's when I realized she went through this and she's still standing. I think I'm gonna be okay, but it's gonna be like I knew at that moment that she was still standing and she was so strong that I needed to be strong and I needed to be there for my kids, because that's all she's ever done is she's been there for the family and she's taking care of her kids, her grandkids. So I think that was my strength at the moment, was watching what my grandma had gone through, and knowing that I had to be Angel's strength too.
Yeah. I think we were giving the military a hard time, but there is one thing that they do well is, and I think you said real quickly so people know, is like when that happens, the Army did assign a casualty assistance officer that helps you get through those things. And that's one of the things that I think we've had some men on that talked about doing that duty, but we've never had anyone on that's been on the receiving side of that. So what was that like, having that person that's able to kind of be the gap, the bridge between all the military stuff that has to happen, the funeral work and all that while you're grieving? How much of a help was that, or was it not a help, or what looking back on that whole experience, what did you take from it?
It was definitely a help, because my family wasn't familiar with, I was the first one to leave for the military. My grandfather, he had served so long ago too. So for my family, they didn't know what was going to happen. And I wasn't having the best time with my in-laws because of everything, because they were also grieving. And I was making decisions because Ray would always be like, I want to be by the ocean. I want to be by the ocean. And so we had differences in where his body, where he would be laid to rest. And I always said he's going to be by the ocean. So he's at Rosecrans National Cemetery in San Diego, overlooking the ocean. And I think she helped with the paperwork, with getting everything done. Years later, I was still trying to find the paperwork because, I got home and I just put things away because I knew some things would happen automatically, but I just didn't want to think about it. Because everywhere we went, my mom, I love her, but everywhere we'd go, she's like, my daughter just lost her husband. And I'm like, I don't, and then you get people asking you questions. And then when we actually showed up to the Rosecrans for the service, there was news stations from the US and from Mexico. And I was like, I'm not talking to anybody because I'm serving. And I just felt like it was an opportunity. I wasn't going to let them have an opportunity to ask me questions that I wasn't ready to answer. Mm-hmm. Because what if at the time I was upset? Because of course I was upset that would happen, but I wasn't upset at the fact that, we were serving. I was upset at what happened, but I knew he loved what he did. So her name was Valerie. The one thing I will say that probably was instilled in my brain after she said it was, you can date, but you can never remarry. And that was 21-year-old me. That's what she said. And maybe, look, she probably didn't mean it for something, but from her experience, she knew that those were laws that were in place. Yeah. But 21-year-old me was like, what are you talking about? I have no idea.
Yeah. And I hope we could talk about that in a lot of detail later, because that's one of the things I think that is going to blow people's minds. But,
she was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that's going on, so what, again, you're 20 years old at this time, right? 21. Okay.
Yeah. Ray was 22.
Yeah. 19, you were separated, from him, mm-hmm. Geographically, right? Now you have this happen where you're both overseas, you lose your husband, mm-hmm. Still no anger towards the military. You're just kind of still 21 years old, just rolling with the punches. At that point, was there any thoughts of you to be like, hey, I'm done with this. This has cost me a lot of grief. It cost me my husband. I'm punching out.
I was given the option. I will tell you, I was given the option. Yeah. But at that point, and I've always I have not changed my name tag on my uniform. I wear the name Ojeda, and in my mind, I was like, how do I, even at 21, I was like, how do I keep moving on, or how do I go on? If I knew what was waiting for me at home, because we grew up, I knew there was nothing there for me. I was going to go back to college, or I was going to sit in a small town, and I was like, I can't do that. I love what I did. I love serving. I love being in the military, and I just wasn't thinking about and my grandma was willing to move with me. One of my cousins, she was young enough, she moved with me back to Hawaii. So I was like, I have a support system. And so I went back to Hawaii, and I continued to serve and not really tell everybody about what had happened. But at the same time, the anger wasn't there. I can't say that I regretted or that at one point I was like, I need to leave. When the option was given to me, I knew a lot of my friends that had gotten out on family care plan, and they were also struggling financially to find a job and to find daycare. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And this isn't what he would have, he did all of that for me to just get out. But I wasn't also thinking about what I was missing out with my son, the time that later on the Army would take away, my time in the Army would take away. So I just kind of went back to Hawaii and actually re-enlisted a couple months after.
So, you said you didn't talk, you said you didn't, try to just kind of move on and say it didn't happen, but the Army's a small world. So obviously your people in the unit, people know that you lost Ray, that mm-hmm. you were a mm-hmm. Gold Star widow, Gold Star spouse. Did those, how was that, there had to be something that's always in the back of your head. Were people treating you differently? Were you just trying to just be a normal, soldier at that time? Or was it what it was, what was it like? Because, there's, I've talked to a lot of spouses where, they weren't in the military. You kind of it's different, right? You leave the post, you go back home, yeah. Right? You're going right back into it. There's got to be people that are like, what is she doing? Why is she still in the military? What,
there, there was, especially with a young baby.
Yeah. What was the general feeling around you? What were you getting from grandma and grandpa? Like what was, what was going on?
My grandpa was always supportive. So he told me I would always make, he'd always support my decisions. Of course, my grandmother and my mom, they wanted me to come home because I was raised in a family. I was raised at home, surrounded by my aunts, my uncles. We didn't go to daycare. We didn't go, babysitters. Like we were raised by our aunts and uncles. And when one worked, one stayed home. So I would say getting back to my unit, and the leadership back then, I don't think they knew how to handle a loss. Like it was boots on ground. How many people can we get out there? So I kind of feel like I was kind of outcasted when I got back to my unit, because my unit was still deployed, but I was just put on rear detachment, like, hey, do this admin work. Hey, do this, do that. I wasn't told, hey, go to counseling, which now in hindsight, there's probably something that when I go to the VA, they're like, they should have sent you to counseling. And I was like, they did not. And they're like,
I made a laugh, but it's like, that would have been a really good idea. But
no, I had a conversation with a gentleman on the phone that was trying to help me. And he's like, well, why didn't they send you? And I said, sir, I can't tell you why they didn't send me. But I just know that throughout the years, maybe I don't think they knew what to do. Yeah, I don't think they knew what to do.
Well, it's just interesting. Like that's why I love these conversations, and I've been super excited to talk to you about this, because I think this is like when I envision like these conversations, these are the ones that I'm like, just because there's so much going on and background. Like when you bring that up, it's interesting to say, because as you were talking about, in my mind, if I were a commander, I would have been like, what is she doing? She needs to go spend time with this kid, her kid, like her child with him. That's all she's got. Like, why risk it? Like and it wouldn't have been in a negative way, if that makes sense. But as you talk about it, when you talk about what am I doing? I'm giving up my career, I'm, which ties into my, the money I make. I'm widowed. I have a kid. I don't have a job, and then I'm supposed to go back to the family or the area that I was trying to get rid of. But I was thinking my time back then, or even when I was a commander, that's not what I'd be thinking. It was more that the feeling that you felt outcast. And I don't know if it was because we didn't know. We didn't talk about like a lot of these things, what that meant. Like no one was going to sit down and have a conversation. Maybe the counseling's like, we can't send her to counseling because if she goes there and she has these problems, she's not going to be able to continue to go in the military. So in these weird ways, I just see myself and probably these commanders you talk to, like I would have been like trying to get you to get out of the military. I would have been like go home, forget about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not knowing that, or understanding what that meant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, my command team, my unit was still deployed. So everybody that was on rear detachment, they were people that had not gone at all. So they really did not know what to do.
Yeah.
And even when I left there after I reenlisted, they were like, wait, you didn't go to the board? You didn't do this? And I'm like, no, I've kind of just been sitting in an office, showing up, doing admin work. And they're like, oh, so they kind of put me in a corner in a desk and were like, let's put this fragile soldier here because we don't know what to do, and we don't know what the resources are, because it was so new to everybody. And it was, I don't know, and maybe you're right, maybe in their eyes it was easier for me to just get out, because then they wouldn't have to.
Well, I don't even know if it's like help, like I mean, this again, I think we had this is 2004, like I mean, there'd been wars before, but in all honesty, like this hadn't happened in a long time. Right. And even if you go back to like the wars that the Vietnam War and stuff like this, there wasn't a lot of dual parents going on. And I mean, it's a part of me that's like, when you look at it, I'm not trying to like,
no, absolutely.
Say, hey, they handled it the right way, but like a lot of people just didn't know. And I mean, and a lot of the decisions you have to make in that day as a commander, you're really trying to look out for the best interest of that person. Correct. Right. But you just don't know what it looks like until it starts happening. And then you try to figure it out, because there's like, if I were a commander, I'd be like, I don't want to like, I'd be worried about you taking care of your son, taking care of yourself. I could give a shit if you were doing your job.
Right.
Right. And like I said, and all that may be that I think I'm helping you and I'm really not.
So in 2000, when I left Hawaii, I went to Washington. But before it was JBLM, it was Fort Lewis, and I actually had a commander that was like that. So I went from nobody really wanted to, they didn't know what to do. So I PCS to Fort Lewis, and it was before Angel started school. So in my mind, I'm like, well, let me get this deployment out of the way because they were already going to go, and then if I go on this deployment, I probably won't have to go on the next one, and I want to go before he starts kindergarten. And I had already talked to my grandmother because at this time, my grandmother, she would travel all the time. And she would just stay with me and she would just, do everything. And she loved it because she was able to spend time with Angel, and they're so close even now. That's who he lives with. But, and I got to the unit and I had to go. I went to go talk to the Sergeant Major and I explained my situation to him. And, he listened to me. I said, well, I just want to, I don't want to have to unpack my stuff. I just want to get this over with so I can come home and then my son will start kindergarten. And he was, he was listening. But then I went back to my first sergeant's office and he said to me, not everyone's going to have sympathy. And that's when I knew, like, you really don't know what's going on. Like, you really have no idea, like, it's not like I didn't know what maybe the Sergeant Major had told him, but I was like, that's not what I asked for. I asked to go. I didn't ask to, but maybe in the Sergeant Major at that time was like, she doesn't need to be going. Like, I don't know what she's thinking. Why does she need to go? and throughout the deployment, my commander, who's retired now, he called me and he's like, hey, I'm going to bring you out here. And I was like, okay. And then he said he slept on it and he's like, I can't do it. I can't. If something happens to you, then I wouldn't be able to live with myself. But when the first started, like when he told me, like, not everyone's going to have sympathy. And I was like, what does he mean by that? Because I didn't understand what version of the story he got, but it kind of, and that's why I really didn't talk about it. And when I got to units, I didn't tell them, hey, this is, I'm a surviving spouse. I didn't even really know like what the definition of a Gold Star spouse was. Like, I wouldn't tell people. I just kind of show up to unit and they'd be like, oh, here's this single parent. And
so what was that? What was your reason behind that? Was it more to just not be treated differently? Just
part of it was to not be treated differently, because depending on who you talk to, they had their own opinions of, and then but then when I got to that unit, it kind of opened my eyes to know that, like, he saw it as I was trying to get out of a deployment. And I was like, no, I'm trying to go so I don't have to go later and unpack my whole life again. But I wasn't thinking about what if I didn't come back, which later on when I did deploy in 2012, that came back to me because I was sitting on a convoy. And I'm sitting in the truck and I'm just like, it hit me. And I was like, what am I doing here? I was like, if something happens to me, Angel has nobody. Like, he doesn't have, like, he has my family, but his mom and his dad will be gone. And he was 9 years old at the time. And returning from that deployment, he came running up to me, tears in his eyes, and he was like, I thought you were coming back. And after that, the way I looked at things completely changed, because those couple years before, from 2004 to 2012, I really hadn't thought of how is this affecting my child, because he was so happy all the time. He was so happy. He was so outgoing. But then when his mom deployed, and even though he was surrounded by family, he was surrounded by my grandmother, he still, in his brain, his little 9-year-old brain was like, what if my mom doesn't come back? Yeah. And that's when, that's the same time I found TAPS. But,
I want to just, again, thank you for, being so open about this, because there's a lot of things going in my mind about this, I asked you, like, why you didn't, tell people what was going on, and because you got treated differently. It's like that whole thing, like, you're right. Like, how does it fall? Does it fall with, this person, do we treat her with, like white gloves? Do we, I mean, just being a single parent in the military does have it's like, if I look back at it, there's a lot of, like,
stigma.
There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that like all of a sudden, like when it comes down to it, it's like, hey, like we don't really care. This is a choice you made. This is a
Right.
personal decision you made. But like, tying in Ray and being a Gold Star, that might have taken away some of that. I mean, the bullshit you got from that. You know what I mean? It's just interesting. But I can understand now, like, why you would, you choose one route. You know what I mean? Because it's like if you still want to move on with your career, like I just look at it, it's like maybe I'm in some way trying to apologize for some of the ways that you were treated with that. But I just think I look back, like we said earlier, is a lot of times, everybody was doing the best they could with with the thought process they had. I mean, I do know that if I would have had a Gold Star spouse, I would have done everything not to like have them deploy again. I probably would have treated them different because I didn't want them not, something to happen to them. You know what I mean? And without even thinking about the consequences of what that means to the service member, if that makes sense, if that's what they really want. You know what I mean?
And I think everybody was still learning, because I didn't even learn about, I learned from another service member that had also lost her husband that there was an option where, like, in the regulation, it said that you technically didn't have to deploy. Like, it's that whole soul surviving, like with the child. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know this. So this was like, as the years went on, I learned different things. And I would tell my story in different rooms, but it just varied of who I would tell. And then also by opening up, that means I would have to actually deal with, and I had not been to counseling. I had not been to therapy. And I thought I was, I knew I wasn't handling it well, because when I was in Hawaii, I mean, I had friends that would pick me up from just late nights, because, you hang out with your friends. When my friends came back from deployment, hang out, and at the end of the night, I'm the one crying on the curb and my friends definitely took care of me. So I survived my time in Hawaii because I had really good friends that understood, because they were deployed with me. So it was different when they would go out with me, when they would be around me, because they were part of that deployment. They knew what we had gone through. They knew what was going on. So it was different. Like, they didn't judge me. So a lot of those friends I still have, and some were at my wedding. So it was awesome.
So did you, with you not dealing with the counseling, not really kind of dealing with it, like, what were some of the things how were you masking it? Were you drinking, or like, was it, was there anything else going on? I mean, were you just kind of distant? Like,
I definitely became distant. I became distant from, became distant from my in-laws, because I was afraid that they would take take Angel with him, or take Angel. And so I became distant with my in-laws. And then I also definitely probably consumed more alcohol than I should have, because it was just a numbing. It was just to numb. I was 20, 22, 23, like my time in Hawaii. When I got to Lewis, it wasn't as bad, but when everybody first came back from deployment and you're there, and then when his unit came back from deployment and I was there at the ceremony, it was definitely like, now I have to deal with this. Like, now he's not coming back. And so I coped in ways of alcohol, but I was still Sergeant Ojeda, or Specialist Ojeda, at 6 o'clock in the morning, standing in formation. Like, there was a very clear line of, this is my grief and this is my career. And if you I look back at my career, I'm like, if somebody that would have been in charge of me probably wouldn't have noticed, unless they knew exactly what was going on after I would leave work.
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that no one wants to talk about. Everyone loves to talk about, like, numbing through alcohol, numbing through like drugs, numbing through, all these other things. But like, work is a numbing mechanism. And I think a lot of people that, that I was guilty of that for a long time, was like, work is a numbing mechanism, because you work. You can forget about it. You're focused on, task at hand. Everything else is like, you don't have to worry about what's going on at home.
Right.
You don't have to worry about your feelings, because you're, especially in the military, as you start becoming an NCO, now I'm worried about all my soldiers' problems. I can just put my problems, in my rucksack and not worry about it. So it's one of those things that, I love when people talk about, I just threw myself into work. It's the same. It's like, it's literally like almost throwing yourself into, a glass of whiskey in my mind. I mean, people can agree and disagree, but that's kind of how I have it. So when did you start realizing, oh shit, like I'm not dealing with grief very well. I've been grief stricken probably my whole entire life. All these things have been happening to me. Like, when did you start like saying, hey, I need to really address what's going on for me internally?
When I came back from Afghanistan in 2012, and
Okay.
Angel was, Angel's reaction to me coming back, it was a life change. It was life changing for me, because I also was not supposed to go on that deployment. My first sergeant had decided that I was going to be the rear detachment NCO, and I was like, not again. Like, yeah. But at the time, my platoon didn't have very little leadership. Like, they had brand new NCOs, mostly specialists. And I was like, there's no way I can't do this. Like, I can't, knowing what I know and what I've gone through, I can't send my platoon with no NCOs, no experience. So I went into my first sergeant's office and I was like, I want to go. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I want to go. And he was like, okay, well, you leave on this date. And but I wasn't thinking about, because once again, I had my amazing support system, and I never really thought of, I knew my kids were taken care of. You see smiles on their face, you see, joy, and you're like, they're good, they're okay. And as long as you're surrounded by family, you'll be fine, because that's how I grew up. I was surrounded by my family. So I think that's when I realized, like, when I was coming back from that deployment, that not only did I need help for myself, I needed to start looking for resources so that Angel didn't have to grow up without understanding what had happened to him. But also the changes when we come back from deployments now, you have to go through a whole process. Like, you have to go and you have to do mental health, and you have to do this and that. I don't think in 2004, I don't think we went through that. So I was kind of forced in the reverse, health assessment. I was definitely forced to talk to somebody, and poor captain, I can't remember if she was a captain or a major. I made her cry. And I was like, this is why I don't share. Cause she put me on antidepressants. She put me on some other medication, but she cried, and I was like, this is why I don't want to share my story, because I'm just going to make somebody cry. And that wasn't my intention. She asked me how I was feeling at the time and how deployment went, and, life-changing things that had happened. And I made her cry, and she put me on antidepressants. So that was not, throughout from the beginning of like 2004, I've also dealt with, like suicidal ideations and stuff like that. And when they put you on medication that you're not ready to deal with, like, that also makes it worse. So I did not handle that very well. So coming back from Afghanistan was definitely when I needed to find the resources for both of us.
So how did it feel when they, you talked about sharing that with her and crying, but how do you feel about all of a sudden now here's all this medication. Oh my gosh, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Because that was always my fear of like talking to anybody. It was like, hey, whenever I started talking, it was like, okay, now, oh wow, you're really messed up. So here's like, you should take this, you should take that.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel at that point? I mean, because I know the first time somebody talked to me about taking medication, I was like, go fuck yourself. Like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean?
I thought it was going to ruin my career.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why I didn't get the help. And I didn't get the help that I needed, was because I felt like it would, if I went to go talk to somebody, if I went to go share that I was having these thoughts, or that I was having a problem with alcohol, or, that I was going to get put into like this category of people that wouldn't get promoted, or would be looked at as like, you're not fit to be a soldier. And I think that held me back from a lot of opportunities that I could have had to find those resources that now I know. But back then it was like, if I do anything that's going to put a target on me, I don't want to do that, because it's going to, I thought it would affect my career. And I didn't want to do that.
I mean, in some aspects, I know it has done that, because you think about it, but that's one of the things that's like, I tell that everybody now. It's like, it's easier said than done now, but like, it's our mental health and our well-being and our happiness and our will to want to live is way more important than, a stripe or a no cleave or something like that. It's just not worth it. I mean, those are decisions we can't, at the time,
absolutely,
we can't do it. But like, if you don't do it at some point, there's like, when it's all said and done,
right,
when the military goes away or whatever, like, you stop these numbing things, you're still left with all these feelings you've had for a long time. You know what I mean? And I think, it's, I've almost started crying a couple of times as you're talking to, so I kind of know how the counselor feels, and I don't want you to feel bad about that, but it's the reality. I mean, this is the real world that a lot of people don't want to talk about. I mean, it's like, the whole time I've been sitting with you, I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, like all these things. It's like, it's almost, it comes to like, I like to talk a lot about, developmental trauma and things that happen to the kids and how they just happen again. It's like a mirror of who we are. And like, here you are again, like you're your grandmother, then you're also your mom in the same way. It's like how these things continue to happen.
Right.
People wonder why, if you don't open about it, like you've been open about it tonight, people blow by it. I mean, like that's the thing, is like the party became your grandmother.
Yes. And
the party became your mom. You know what I mean? Where you're thinking like, oh, it's great, I can go on, but somebody else is raising my kid. You know what I mean? Life is good. You know what I mean? And it's crazy how, even though we know those things probably are the best for us, we still kind of recreate that. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he, like I said, my kids were happy. When I went to my second deployment, so my youngest son now, he's 16 now, but Christian, he went to stay with his grandparents, and they're amazing too. So both my kids were in good hands, and I just thought I just need to make it to that 20-year mark. I just need to make it to that 20-year mark. And I did change, I would talk to my mom about grief, and I'd ask her, what did she do? And, cause they don't talk about it. I mean, maybe till recently they started talking about how they felt and how that affected their childhood. But growing up, that was never a conversation. So I wanted to change in my own way. I changed that without knowing that I did for my kids now. Cause Christian is he's an advocate for, hey, you're feeling a certain way, go talk to somebody. So I'm really proud of him for that, because that takes a lot for a 16-year-old to go tell his friend, hey, you feel some kind of way, you should go get some help. At 16, I was definitely not doing that.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that until I was about 50 years old either. So I was like, don't tell anybody about that. Don't talk about your feelings. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look back at that, up until that last deployment, with what you were doing, how you were dealing with it, working, throwing yourself into work. I mean, do you think you're being your best version of a mom at that point? Or do you think that you were, there's a part of that numbing and throwing yourself into work that you were,
so
you could have been doing better. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to call you out or anything.
No, you're fine. Now that Angel is 23 and we've had conversations, I definitely use that phrase. Like, I did my best with the information and those resources I had. But I do think he missed out a lot on his time with me, his one-on-one time with me, especially since his dad had passed away. So, I moved. We moved around so much. We went from JBLM, and then I went to Korea for a year, and then I came back. I went to Korea for a year.
I think I would have been the commander that would have been like, listen, Ojeda, you got to get the fuck out of the Army. Like, this is like, I'm glad I met you out of the thing, because I would have been like, what?
Well, and I think that my motivation was I wanted to give my kids a better, but also I knew what was at home. Like, I knew that if I went back to, I learned when I got off active duty that if you don't have a plan, I would see so many people that didn't have a plan, they would struggle. And it was so hard for, job security and just stressful. And I went through it too when I first got off active duty. So for me, it was more like, hey, let me just get to I want to get to that 20-year mark. I want to be, I want to finish my career. I want to, because I was doing it for a sense of pride too, like, my last name, my family, my grandparents. But at the same time, my Angel definitely missed out on a lot of opportunities. And now I, sports, because I was at work, and, my kids were the first ones at daycare and the last ones to get picked up.
Yeah. Well, I think I love your honesty about it, because I think it's like I'm not giving you a hard time. Don't think I am, fine. But it's just like, because I think it's the time I would have been so uncomfortable with the situation. Honestly, that's what I think about. When I just said that, I'm reverting back to me being like, 30-year-old, commander, what do we how are you staying in? Well, now as a 53-year-old man, I'm like, okay, I can see that. I can see what you were fighting back. And the major thing you talked about was like, there's no going back. If all these things have happened to me, I'm going to go back to where I was before. If I don't, and this is the better way, it doesn't seem like it, but this is the better path for my family and for me to move on and be successful in life. And I think that's why I'm uncomfortable. I can see that now. I don't think I saw that path when I was younger. If I would have saw the situation you were going through, I would have been like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah. It's like,
and I think that's also why when I look back at some of my commanders and some of my leadership, I'm like, they were making the decisions sometimes based on their own situation.
Yes. How they were feeling about it. Exactly.
Yeah. And based on their only field. So the one that the officer, I think I was telling you before we started, I was supposed to deploy in 2010. And I was getting ready also to ETS to get out of the Army. And, but I was like, wait, my youngest Christian is almost the same age as Angel was when I deployed the first time. Like, it was just deja vu for me. And I was like, I don't think I could do this. Like, I don't think I could do this. So that was the first time I actually was like, I can't do this. Like, I what if something happens? Even though in 2012 I went back in. But one of the officers in my unit, he's like, well, you had another kid, you've moved on. So, and I was like, that I still didn't go because I was like, that doesn't matter. Like, me having another child or moving on with my life has nothing to do with me losing my first husband at 21 and being scared that I'm not going to come home. So that was a great opportunity for him to probably be like, you probably need to go to therapy.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely would not. I'm not that sounds like a complete idiot. I'm not saying I would say it anyway but it's just a tough, like I said before, I think you said it, but like we came to the conclusion that like all those things that are happening, a lot of them are, especially when you're dealing with something like that, where a gold star spouse, someone that's lost their husband in war, they're going to be trying to do things to make themselves feel the best they can too. And I've done that before. And it's like, not in those same situations, but other things. It was like a lot of things I was like, I have to do this to make myself right, so I can go to sleep at night, not like thinking about, and that's the way that system is too. Like, that's kind of the way it is too. I think that's why now I'm like, where I'm at my age now, I can rattle around and be like, oh God, the guy. But I could see somebody saying that. I've heard other people say it in a different way. Some of the comments are crazy. But it's just how it is. But I do kind of want to talk a little bit about the survivor benefit stuff, because I think that's a subject that you want to talk about as well. Yeah. And it ties back to what you said before, kind of the tie-in of you can fall in love, but you can't. What did they say? Oh, she said you could date, but you can't. Yes. Yeah, pretty much you can't fall in love. You can't remarry. Yeah. So explain that to, like, I guess the audience, like, when you have, you would know this better, but there's a ton of benefits that there's some things that happen as a Gold Star spouse that, some benefits that you get as long as you don't remarry. So this is kind of like, that's where that comes from. It's even the fact that she said that to you, she knew the law before I knew the law. Because it's important. Yeah, there's law. So there's like some things you get, like, that I think that I'd love to talk about is, you have the dependency and indemnity compensation, the survivor benefit package, you have TRICARE, you have institution, like access, which, wouldn't have been the same. It would have been different with you being on active duty, but then you have like educational benefits. But basically there's like, with all that stuff, which are great benefits, there's one thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, but we'll call it the marriage penalty, right? Correct. All those things that we're talking about, if you wed before you're 55, you lose all those benefits. Yes. And for me, the also even some of those benefits, because I was on active duty, I wasn't able to receive them, like education. So when I got off active duty, they were like, oh, well, you only have this period left because he passed more, because I got off active duty at 14 years. They're like, you still have like a couple years left. And I was like, how does that, doesn't the time start? Like, there's a time on this. But the Love Lives On Act, which is, so right now, let me go back. So right now, if a surviving spouse remarries, she loses all those benefits. And
That is your TRICARE, your SB.
So TRICARE for everybody is healthcare.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you lose your healthcare insurance. You lose access. You used to lose access to post. That's changed. But initially you would lose access to post. You would lose your kids if you had kids. So just imagine you lose your access to post, but you still have little ones that have to go on post. So now you have to go through the whole process of going on post, getting a pass just so you can take your kids to a doctor's appointment only because you remarried. So there's been a lot of changes, but the biggest one is right now it's the Love Lives On Act, and what that would do if that would get approved, it would take away. If somebody were to remarry before the age of 55, you would still keep some of those benefits.
Yeah, and I mean, I've known, like, it's interesting. Like when I research this again, I always research it, but I've known this, and it's kind of like you know it, but you're kind of like.
And I never really thought about it.
You think about it, you're kind of like, oh, cool, but then you just start thinking about, you're kind of like, okay, the stuff that you're talking about, especially if you have you were dual military, so some of these things you're still getting, but like if you're not, like we're talking about, you lost Ray when you were 21 years old.
Yes.
Like what are you supposed to do for the next 34 years of your life?
Date.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, and how are you supposed to? It's just when you think about that, you don't like when I like I said, I've known this, but like there's a part of it sometimes I'm just like you don't understand until you really talk to like Gold Star spouses. You're kind of like, oh, this doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's what I don't think people realize is like we're not talking about like, I get it if someone had a heart attack at 45 years old or something. I mean, but at 21 years old, what do we expect widows to do for 34 years? Well, I think it's really hard to say, hey, you can, if you want to keep all these benefits, just
and that was the reality.
And it is a balance of what do you do? I mean,
well, especially when you have kids, right? I mean, fortunately for me, I guess I had my job, but then you meet widows out there. They have they're stay-at-home moms and they have more than one child. How are they supposed to? How can they get penalized for now they have to go back to work? Because I mean, it's just now the one financial stability that they had, they'll lose if they find somebody else. And one of the comments that is also made, and I've had leadership say to me, well, your new husband should pay for they should take care of you. And I'm like, that's not, I hear you. But at the same time, my husband, like Ray did his, he served, he went to war, it wasn't like he got out of the Army or he retired. Like he died in combat, and he did this knowing that his family would be taken care of. And I had this conversation with Tanner last night because I was going through like what, my brain just started. And I told him, I said, what happens is you get into these relationships where there's probably not a like a wedding or there's no stability because if somebody actually, or even the faith part of it, like you're growing up and teaching your kids it's okay to live together but not be married. And that for me was very hard, because then your kids get older and they're like, why should I get married? Well, you guys didn't. So that was one of the reasons, and a lot of families go through that where they're having all these like, hey, we want to do things the right way. Like we want to, we want to be married. We want to live together. We want to share this love. It wasn't, you don't go out looking for love. But when you push it away because like, for example, I knew that I wasn't going to get married anytime soon. So I attracted people that were unstable. I'm just being honest, because I knew that eventually they wouldn't be asking for marriage and that sounds terrible, but those are the things that you're like, this is the situations I put myself in because I know that, or I feel that I am not, I don't want to make a decision between falling in love and financial stability. And I went through that when I was on off active duty, because then I didn't have my active duty job and I lived off of just my survivor benefits. And it was hard even doing that. So I can't imagine.
So do you feel like the system did force you to choose between
absolutely.
financial security and like love and happiness?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that affected my son too, my oldest, and even my youngest too. Because they see you go through it. They don't understand it, but they see you go through it, and they see like other families, that are what they would call like,
Normal.
I guess normal. Yeah, I hate using the word normal, but and so that's one time when Christian was like, "Well, why would I? Well, I'm not getting married. Why? We just live together." And I was like, "No, like."
Yeah, because I think that too, because that's what it is. It's like, yeah, you're just, I think what most people do is they, I've heard with spouses too, that they just live with these people. They can never get married. They can, but they have to choose. And a lot of them are forced to say, hey, I'm going to just cohabitate. We're going to be in a relationship, but we can't get married because I'm going to lose these benefits that are important to me. And I think that's just like you said before, that has an effect on a lot of people. I think a lot of people it's not a big deal as long as you're staying together. And yeah, that's not you that's dealing with it, but it just doesn't seem right to me.
And
it doesn't seem like
it
doesn't seem like it's as I researched more of this, I did research the Love Lives On Act and how it's a bipartisan bill. It's been up a couple of times. I still think it's in Congress right now. I think the last time it went up was like last year, right?
Yes, and right now it's in the the Taking Care of Veterans Act. So that it's in that bill. It's within the writing of that one.
Yeah, and it's things that I like when you look at that. It's not the first time it's come up either.
No.
It's been numerous times gone up. Yeah, it's bipartisan, but still it doesn't ever get signed. And that's the kind of thing is I look back and I'm like, when I think about this, I'm like, yeah, I get it. If it was like I'm 40 years old, but we're forgetting about some of these spouses lost, we're 19 and 20 years old like you that lost their husbands or wives. And like now you have to make a choose. You have to choose. I don't think I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, okay, these men and women are dying, for their country. I never knew that that's what that fucking looked like. I never knew that this existed.
Yeah.
When I was going off and deployed, I wonder how many people do. Like, if I'd known that was the thing, I'm like, holy shit! Like, we're not really. I want you. Yeah, you're taken care of, but don't ever meet another dude. Like, you can't. Just.
Which is funny because Ray would joke around as like, if you're not here, I'm going to find somewhere to take care of me and my son. He would say it jokingly, but I mean, realistically. I mean, who's to say, like you said, like 20 years. So,
but I mean, even like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying to jump in a relationship. I'm just saying like, I ultimately, if it were me and I don't, I can't speak on that as like, if my wife were raising kids by themselves and she met a man that loved her, was going to take care of my kids, that's what I want. And I don't think she should be punished to do that she should lose some benefits and
that's what it feels like.
Really, yeah. I mean, every time, I mean, like I said, I knew this, but like, I was getting so fired up last night about it, and then today I put it down because I was like, man, it's such, to me, it's such bullshit. And these are one of the things like not enough people talk about. And these are the things we say we take care of the military. And like there has to be a better method to this. And it appears to be that with the Love Lives On Act.
Yes.
It's just like people got to get off their hands to and sign this fucking thing and put it away because it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. The punishment for a spouse to continue to move on. Yeah, the kids are taking care of, but like, and that's what I've heard people say that too. Well, the kids are taking care of the way, but it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
But that money you're also that money you're also getting, you're also using that on your kid. Like you're using that for your kids too. And that's when a lot of people say, like, I believe that if we change it, once you get handed that folded flag, sometimes spouses are forgotten. They feel forgotten. I mean, I kept serving, but you have a lot of spouses that I talk to. They're like, you move away and you lose that military connection, and now you have a flag sitting on your counter, but you really don't have that support system. And then when you run into laws like getting penalized because you remarried before the age of 55, now you just feel like, okay, what else is going to get taken away from me? So that definitely. I advocate more from my point of view is so that I can help somebody not go through what I went through. Like if I was 21, I would never wish this upon anybody at any age, but definitely not that 21-year-old or 20, young widow that is raising young kids on her own. because I would never want, and that's why even though for me, I went through my own grief journey and I made decisions, but when I support like bills like the Love Lives On Act, it's because I want people behind, like the widows behind me, to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And not to feel like they have to make a choice between choosing love and choosing financial stability.
Yeah, because I think that's like I was going to ask this question. So, like, obviously, you talked about Tanner. You got remarried. You got remarried. So, was losing your benefits one of the things you really had to consider before you said, "Yeah, hey, we're going to get married"?
Of course.
and
of course.
I know that was the answer, but that to me is like, that just makes my blood boil, because it's like it's already a tough enough decision to get married. Now we have to worry about there's a financial thing that's tied into it. You know what I mean? Like it just seems like a no-brainer that this needs to change. You know what I mean?
Yes. And it was one of those where I'm pretty sure if Tanner was in the room, he'd tell you, like, he was very persistent. I kept pushing him. I was like, no. And just because I knew that in his mind, like, he was the kind of person that eventually I knew he wanted to settle down. And I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I don't know if but I wanted to, because I was tired of, especially when I had gotten more involved with TAPS and, reading, actually, like, listening to other spouses tell their stories when we would go up to Capitol Hill, and like just kind of being tired of like pushing good people away. I was like, no, this is not fair. Like, I shouldn't have to put my happiness on hold because of financial stability. And so it was definitely a conversation that we had. And it's never an easy one, right? Because then how do you, depending on who you're telling, they're like, well, does that mean the money's more important than us getting married? And he was never that way, but I'm pretty sure that there is some situations where the new spouse might feel like, are you choosing to have, the financial stability over, marriage? Is that,
I mean,
and that would be an argument too.
But that's, I mean, I think it's a discussion that shouldn't even have to be happening. I mean, like, and especially when you start talking about when you're, again, you did, I don't think there's any right time to lose your spouse. Right. So, there's, so nobody chooses that, it happened to you at, 21 years old. It does, it happens to people, it happens to 19-year-olds. It happens to 18-year-olds. Right. It's happened. I mean, like, the question is, why are we making, spouses draw a line between, okay, I either have to be financially secure or alone, right? Or in some type of weird arrangement, right? Or, why can't it be both? And I've heard people say that same stupid thing of like, oh, well, your new spouse can pick up the slack. And I'm kind of like, that doesn't make sense. Like I said before, I just don't, I wonder really how many, I mean, it's got to be more well known probably, but probably not as what this exactly means. Like for service members that know what because like I knew this happened, but I didn't understand the part about, oh yeah, she's going to lose his benefits if she gets married. Like I remember hearing that for the first time, probably like 07 or something, like talking to a bunch of, there's a gold star, a gold spouse event, and they're talking to them, and I was like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, yeah, if we get married, we lose all these benefits. I'm like, whoa, I never knew that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I didn't think about it too much. I mean, I'd get the letters in the mail, I'd sign them, I'd verify that I still hadn't remarried. So for me, I really didn't think about it because it was one of those things that it hadn't crossed my mind. I was like, this is what I'm doing. But I wouldn't want somebody else to have to go through years of feeling alone or feeling like they have to hide their relationship or not being able to just be, because it does play a toll on your mental health. It definitely does, because after our wedding or days leading up to the wedding, I struggled a lot with, am I making the right decision? I've waited 20 years, and nothing against Tanner, but like he really didn't, like he was, he sympathized, but he didn't know what I was going through. And, but it was hard. And even right after we got married, I went up to Capitol Hill and I was telling my story. And I felt like I use the word punished because that's what it felt like. Like I was the first time I had to say like, hey, this is, I lost my benefits. Like I had to choose, and it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel fair. It feels like punishment. Like, and I went to therapy for it a couple months after that, because I was like, I need to get over, like, this is affecting my new marriage, because I feel like this isn't right. And I need to, like, I also don't, what if my husband now is active duty. So then I also have that worry, like, what if something, he's not deploying right now, but what if in the future? So that's a whole nother, therapy session that I had to go through, like, because now I'm connected to somebody again, and now I have the fear of losing somebody again.
So the one thing I couldn't figure out though, so like if you do remarry as a gold spouse and say you get divorced from that person, do the benefits restart?
Not your healthcare.
So everything except for healthcare.
Yes, and then your education benefits, a couple. I don't have it in front of me, but that was also corrected last year or 2 years ago, where now you can, even if you've remarried, you can use your education benefits. That was correct.
But you're like your DIC and your it comes back if you do get divorced again.
Yes.
But I did
not your healthcare, and a lot of people that healthcare is a big and that's, I think, why the bill has gone, it's gone back for changes, it's gone back for different things. Is, in the beginning it was a lot more like, when they really wanted to push this the first time, it was including healthcare, and of course healthcare is expensive.
Yeah.
But that is one thing that you do not get back, is your healthcare.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm saying this sarcastically, but they did change it because it used to be 57. They did 55. So I mean, it seems such an archaic.
It is. That's exactly the verbiage in the love list.
It's just so like.
Especially when you're 21.
I'm getting so worked up over here because I'm just like, the more I think about it, I'm like, because it's just things that we don't. This is the things we don't talk about. Like everyone's just like, oh, all these benefits have happened, and I guess if you were to talk to like the people who listen or lawmakers, like, how do you getting remarried affect you as a Gold Star spouse and a family? Like there's like, I'm
still in therapy. Yeah. Because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of walls that I had put up. So I'm still working, navigating through that. And Tanner, he understands. It's not that, he just knows that, like, he's there for me. But there is some things that, once I open the doors to having somebody, like my emotional, like my best friend again, like, it's not easy, because you have put up those walls because you knew in your head, you're like, I'm not getting remarried. I'm 55.
Yeah.
So it is definitely, it's definitely shaped different parts of my life. I was already back in the reserves when we met. And the only reason I wasn't able to go back on active duty when I tried was because I was a single mother. And the reason I was a single mother was because I had lost my first husband on deployment, which is kind of ironic that they were like, yeah, you can't come back on. You can't go on active duty because you're a single parent. Well, yeah. I tried not to, the recruiter did the best he could. He tried to like get waivers, and there's no matter the situation of how I became a single parent. So that's how I ended up in the reserves. But it definitely shaped losing benefits, and just mentally I had to shift.
Yeah, because I think of like this, like, obviously, I don't know. I'm not divorced, but I haven't lost my spouse. I'm not widowed, but the how sudden it is, right? How, how you are, the loss, right? You grieve loss. A lot of it is like, and war is a young man's game and young woman's game too. So like, this has happened to a lot of young people, right? So like, yeah, I can imagine that you guys start off with like, hey, I got to keep my heart back because I don't want to not be, because it's different than divorce, right? It's right. It's like am I not being faithful to Ray? Am I not, that's who I chose. But so I got to keep my heart protected, right?
Right.
At the same time, I got to protect my wallet.
Mm-hmm.
So you bounce, you live a life like that for a long time. And then all of a sudden, when you do decide to get, remarried with this, it's like, now I'm dealing with opening my heart back up.
Yep.
Now I'm also being punished financially. That
Yeah.
It just seems like it seems like a double-edged sword, really, that doesn't make sense. It's got to be hard enough for a Gold Star spouse to say, hey, I'm going to, and not that loss is different. It's just, I just know this from, the women that I met and the men that I know that lost a spouse away. It's different than, getting sick or divorced. It's different. There's it wasn't a choice for you guys not to be together anymore.
Right. And that's why, and I think
not that sickness isn't, but I don't know if it's.
No. And that's another thing with the bill. It's inclusive. So it's not, and I think throughout the years they've tried, the Gold Star, the definition of a Gold Star spouse, and a lot of organizations have gone to being a bit more inclusive, like of how the loss happened, which TAPS is one of those. Like you have loss by, you have so many different ways that somebody, and they're very inclusive about that. But I think the one thing that I thought about when you were talking was finding somebody that's actually gonna embrace the way you honor your loved one, the one you lost, because there's not a house that I've lived in that my flag's not in, or a picture of Ray, or and I was fortunate enough to find somebody that also honors that loss that I experienced. But sometimes there's some surviving spouses that don't have that they're also being punished because, like, why do you still have these pictures up? Like, and I'm like, how are you?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that comes in security, because it's like, hey, like you said before, it's like if you're a man or a woman and you see that, like if it's a man, I'd be like, okay, if I see a picture of Ray and all this stuff, like all these things, so I'm like, I only know that I'm with you because he's passed away,
right?
And so I can understand
that's
how a guy
brain,
but that's where like we talked about earlier, is I'm going to make a decision based on how it's making me feel. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, a lot of these men can't understand how, there's a,
well, especially when there's something they can't involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you have, like, I mean, it's just it's not easy for anyone.
No.
I mean, and it's a horrible situation for anybody, but like the right people have got to be like, hey, this is part of who she is. This is who he was in your life. And like, you got to honor that, what I mean? And I know that's not, every dude's like that.
And it goes both ways, because you have also women and men. But I definitely I've known some surviving spouses that they haven't had good experience with that, and it's sad because you have children involved. And how do you expect the child to be like, not talk about their dad they lost, when one, they're being told, oh, you look just like your dad or your mom, and it's just it's sad when I hear things like that.
So you talked about being inclusive now. So with the Gold Star families, like how is it, you have obviously, what happened to Ray, where you're killed in combat. Like how do these organizations deal with now with the suicide epidemic that's going on? Is that still, with the service members on active duty, are they included into the Gold Star families as well?
So depending on the state, on your state benefits, right? Depending on the state, I know, I don't want to quote this wrong, but I know as far as like federal law, it still has not changed. Like the definition of a Gold Star spouse is still federally recognized as like loss in combat or like a training accident. But I know like a lot of the nonprofit organizations, as Angel got older, we saw a lot more suicide loss. And then you have, now we're starting to see families that have lost their loved one to like the burn pits and or just accidents, or and so they're very inclusive, and that's one of the things that changed my perspective, because when I was going through my own suicidal ideations, the one thing that kept me going was my kids. But when I started volunteering with TAPS, a lot of the kids that I love dearly, they lost their parents to they lost their parents to suicide. And when you see that perspective of like, I understand, like, when we were younger, it's like, oh, if you died by suicide, you were weak, or you just didn't want to deal with things, or there's so many different ways. But when you meet the children of those service members, and all they can talk about is their person and how they loved them and how they miss them, it doesn't change how they lost that person. So it kind of shifted my perspective, like, and I started having less thoughts of suicide, because I was like, I can't imagine putting my kids through this. Like, I can't imagine them having to tell a story of, like, I had a moment, or whatever, or medication, or so it kind of motivated me and changed my perspective on suicide, service members and suicide, because I met the families, and I work one-on-one during those camps with the kids, and they're just the most adorable, loving. They, all they want to do is honor their person. They don't care how they lost them. They just want the world to know that they mattered.
Yeah. I think, anybody every loss, that's the important thing, is that they mattered. And I think the suicide one is why we talk about it a lot, is it's one of those, like, there's so much stigma. There's so many, like, there's this, like, ickiness that people just don't want to talk about. And they want to, like, they don't want to understand how it affects everybody else afterwards. It's, it's a decision this person made. So, and then, the families are ashamed to talk about it too, which is very sad for us.
Yeah. And the families are the ones that are stuck with fighting for their benefits.
Yeah.
And now we've seen that too, where there's families that are, they're the ones stuck with the decisions that have to be made, or fighting for some of the benefits that we talked about under the Love Lives On Act, or just being buried in a certain cemetery, like in a national cemetery, things like that you would think if you were a service member, you're entitled to. But it's not pretty.
So a couple other questions where, we'll start winding it down here. So, there's always, like, you have, as a service member, there's always people that are, like, thanking you for your service. Like, when you, like, what is it, if someone's to come across or meet a Gold Star spouse, Gold Star parent, like, how would you like that interaction to go? Like, what, you talked about before earlier, how it's kind of weird, and people, what is that? What's some tips you could give people to, like, if you, I find out you're a Gold Star, spouse, like, what are some things not to say? What are things to say, like, and as being an advocate for this, like, is there a right thing to say? Is there a wrong thing to say? Like, I think you know where I'm going.
I think that I've learned just by even teaching, like being around children, and with our teens and with all our kids, we kind of work on this too. We ask them, and I've learned from working with or volunteering with TAPS, is we ask the kids, like, hey, what are some of the things that people say that you're just like, why would, that are, and some of the things are, well, they're in a better place. It's nice, growing up, when people say they're in a better place, but that's not usually, sometimes that's not very healing. And I would say, ask them about their person, like, ask them about their story. When I tell people about Ray, and sometimes I say it in a conversation, and they, like, pause, and then I finish my conversation. They're like, wait a minute, did you just say? Because I'm so used to just not letting them stop. And then they'll ask me, like, hey, can you, like, tell me something, and I start telling them about Ray, or I start talking about Angel, about what he's doing now, and how much, he's grown, and how much he's so much like his dad. But I think some of the things that I would definitely, especially when it comes to, you did say it with suicide loss, is, they made a choice. But with all the mental health, situations, did they make the choice, or is it something you don't know what state of mind they were in when they made that choice? Or are they thinking about their family? So I think just approach it with kindness, and how can I help? Like, especially, like, with the Love Lives On, it's gained so much momentum, and I think more than any years in the past. So that was one thing when people say, like, how can I help? And I'm like, hey, you could tell people about Love Lives On, or you could tell them about TAPS. Any military member that I meet, I'm like, do you want to come volunteer?
Yeah.
Because by you coming to spend time with these Gold Star families, is how you learn. Like you serving your country is one thing, but now after that that folded flag is handed to that family, you have another opportunity to serve. And that one makes a lifelong impact, because that child is going to remember, like, this is my experience with the military. It wasn't like my mom was handed a flag and then they forgot about us. Like, no, somebody actually cares. Somebody actually still asked me about my dad, asked me about my mom. So I think it's, finding a way where you can find purpose. There's so many organizations in so many ways, but I don't think there's really a perfect thing to say. It's just kind of holding space and just being present, especially depending on, I just listen now. If I meet a new spouse, I'm just like, hey, do you know about this? Or even if I meet a veteran, I'm like, hey, do you know about this resource? Do you know about that? Even though I'm probably not using the resource because I'm very good at giving advice, but I want them to know, because maybe they're in a place where they need that resource.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that, because I think the one thing is, I'm always hesitant and was hesitant more of now is like of asking them about their person, because I think there's a it's important. I mean, the people that we've lost, to be able to talk about them and be able to the people I've lost. It's like it's therapeutic it feels good to talk about them, talk about their life and how the impact this they're not around anymore, but they made how much of an impact they made on my life. Because I always talk about Mike Green is like he was just, the world was a better place with him. I mean, it's just a dude that was always happy. That was always like, it could make walk in here and we'd all just gravitate to him. This person can make everybody smile. And I want people to remember him. That's how I want to be remembered, not for a guy who got blown up in IED in Afghanistan. You know what I mean? I want to remember him as that guy that could bring a smile to everybody's face. That just was like the top of the world. Just a great friend. You know what I mean?
And that's
somebody on your side. And I think it's sometimes people, it's really difficult to ask people that, because we're afraid that we're gonna, touch a nerve. But as I get older and start to, think about those things, I think that's what better way to honor them is to tell their story, and let's be open to that instead, like you said before, to try to,
bottle it in.
Well, like you said before, they're in a better place, or they were serving their country. It's honorable. I mean, that's, at a certain point that gets,
right.
That's, nobody wants to hear that anymore. That's, I feel like that's just the filler to get away from anybody feeling anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's kind of the initial conversation. How do you start the conversation after someone tells you they've had a loss, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the kids find humorous ways to do it. We do find that as older they get and the longer the time has passed of their loss, they definitely they find different ways to cope, and they share that with us. And I like to share that with adults, because I'd be like, look, if a 14-year-old can come up with these incredible ideas of how to cope, we need to share this.
Yeah, I mean, it's because there's a lot of for me, it was like when I think about all these things, there's guilt that didn't happen to me. There's anger that these people made decisions. There's angry at the world, angry at God, all these kind of things.
Yeah.
We're adults, we're processing those things, that it's hard for us to really talk about our feelings. It'd be and like I said, what better way to honor these men and women is to tell their story, you know what I mean? And to to really hear who they were, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because they were somebody before that. Most all of them were either son or daughter,
Yes.
a brother or sister,
Yeah.
a mom or a dad, and that's the story that that's important. You know what I mean? And I think that's even more important when it comes to the veterans that are taking their lives. You know what I mean? Because I think at a point when it comes to suicide, it's like everything seems to stop there, right? We want to just this is all they were. This is what they did. We don't want to talk about who they were. And there's a lot of great things that a lot of them were doing before,
absolutely.
and it's important to talk about, you know what I mean? And thanks for sharing that with us, because I think that's,
if you ever want to change, if you ever have, I'm telling you, a child will change your perspective, because their perspective on a suicide loss is so different from an adult and from the social media and everything. It's just they had a bad day, or, you know, they were going through something and they didn't want to get, you know, they were too afraid to ask for help, or, and it just kind of, and then you meet the family that was left behind, and you kind of changes your perspective. Like, yeah, I can be mad about what they did, but now there's this family that has to pick up the pieces, and it's just like any other family that has to pick up the pieces.
Yeah. And I have it, like, you know, that's why, like, you know, that's why, you know, one of the things that, you know, to get a scholarship from us, you have to be willing to talk about the loss, right? Because I think that's important. It's therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's like I have it that it's a bad decision that we make, right? I almost made this bad decision myself, right? Yeah. A permanent solution to a temporary problem, right? So I just would hope that, you know, if something happened, if I had taken that my family wouldn't have all the shame that's associated with it. And there is no shame associated with it. When somebody talks to me about anybody that's taken their life, there's no shame involved anymore. It's just like, let's talk about who they were, right? Yeah. Let's talk about the good things they did in their life. Let's talk about, we can talk about the bad things too, but like you still have to honor the person. I think that, you know, just to say, hey, this is, you know, like their life ends, and then that's where we don't honor them anymore. And it's interesting because I know it's crazy. 99, you know, we're going to honor our 99th veteran that took their life tonight when we talk about him, Chad. And it's really hard to find a really thorough obituary for a veteran that takes their life. And that to me is sad.
Yeah.
Like I have, like you have to really look into it. I mean, and I joke around about AI. Thank God AI is out there, because that's one thing that ChatGPT can help with, is like it finds those things. But like, if you're just like looking through it and just like, I mean, I challenge people to do it. You're going to find all the, you know, the Navy SEAL guys, all these high, you know, profile ones. But, you know, when you start, you know, try to find one every couple of weeks, like I do, and try to find a story, and then try to find where there's 4 or 5 pictures of that veteran. Right. And they're not out there. And I think that's not the way for us to stop this epidemic. That's not the way to help, you know, the spouses like you. I know, you know, Braden could, you know, take his life, but it's still a loss. That it doesn't, you know, being able to talk about them and sharing who they are is important, not just to forget that they ever existed because they made a bad decision. I mean, it's
challenge accepted. No, I'm going to go look for it.
No, I mean, if you can do it easier, let me know, because it'll help me out as well. But no, it's an interesting thing, because I, you know, I have the things I wanted to, you know, to be able to tell a story about. I just don't want it to want to say something about them, like somebody to say something about them. But like, you can look at it, you can find it, and then there's just that person's name and when they passed away and like where they're being buried, and there's nothing. That's very sad. There's definitely, I could tell you, there's definitely, I mean, I have so many, 2 of my closest kids that I don't talk to on a daily basis, but I see at least once a year. I mean, they'll tell you 1,000 stories that they can remember, or that, you know, depending on their age. And that's and that's why we encourage them, keep telling their stories, because eventually somebody will be looking for their story, and, you know, it'll become a child or somebody that they knew. Yeah, I think it's amazing that you continue to still to tell Ray's story and your story, and it takes a lot of courage to do that, and I'm thankful that you. I try. you do more than try. You do a great job in sharing his story and telling your story. It's this is what, you know. These are the conversations that I never thought this podcast would have. I mean, it was, you know, when we first started a few years ago, but I'm so thankful that, you know, that you made the trip up and you're open to sharing this and getting behind the scenes of all what everybody thinks about. But I'm with you. Like, if you want to help people, you want to help Gold Star families, if anyone's listening, there's going to be a post that's going to be coming out as well on this, and we'll broadcast it out. But like, you need to get behind the Love Lives on act. Yes. You get with your congressman, get with whoever you got. But if you really want to show support to the Gold Star families, you need to start pushing this, because it's at a point where, like you said before, it's got more momentum than it's gotten ever. It's a bipartisan bill. So forget about it. Just ultimately understand who you're taking care of, which is the spouses and kids that, you know, that this benefits. It's because it's something needs to change. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So definitely. Any other conversation about that part, about TAPS, Gold Star families, the Love Lives On Act. Anything else you want to chat about?
No, I
on
just
that?
think of if any of your any of your followers ever want an opportunity to come hang out with some cool kids, they can always contact me, contact you. We're always looking for great mentors. And I think the biggest change that like I told you, with growing up in a family that really didn't have conversations about grief, with my kids, I wanted that to be different. I wanted my kids to be able to come to me with their feelings and make their feelings valid and be like, okay, let's unpack that. Like, that sounds cliche, but let's unpack that, because if you carry that into your adult life, like it can really affect the decisions you make and the opportunities you miss, because you might be selling yourself short. So I've definitely tried to change the generational norms when it comes to talking to my kids. And sometimes they're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because I'm going to tell you how it is. And Christian's like, you're mean. And I said, no, because I have to be honest with you. You're going out there in that real world, and it is not going to be nice. So you need to and he's also, as a high schooler, he's found therapy. They have a really good therapy program in high school. So it's not like when I was his age where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to therapy. Or even when Ray passed away, I was like, no, I'm not going to talk to somebody. I grew up, and the only person I talked to was in my prayers.
Yeah.
So that is one of the biggest things that I've learned as I gotten older, is talking to the younger generation about getting help, asking for help, and being there for others, because it's a cruel world. But if you can just help one person, it's maybe anything.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When we have these conversations, I was thinking about, up in my office, I have a feelings wheel and a feelings card that.
Oh gosh.
It's funny because I used to have one emotion. It was anger, right? But I didn't know why. Like, I was like, people would say I was angry all the time. Mm-hmm. But that's what I wanted everybody to think. But when you start to think about what's going on, there's that feelings wheel is really powerful, because instead of it breaks down how I'm feeling. So there's a lot of meetings I start when we deal with men and having conversation with, like, that's what we start off the conversation, the meeting, talk about how our feelings, and we have this feelings wheel that we look at, and there's it's always exciting to look at, and someone to be like, oh my gosh, I never noticed this feeling was on this feeling wheel. But it talks about how my feelings are being met today and how my feelings aren't being met. And that's been powerful to me to understand why I'm acting the way I'm acting. You know what I mean? Got to tell you, like, for me, I was nervous about this. I was apprehensive. I was scared about this conversation, because it's like not in my, it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not something I'm an expert at, or I think I've done a lot of research on, and I knew it was going to tap into some feelings that I didn't know how I was going to be able to do that. But all those, in the past, I would be like, I would just say I'm anxious, or but really I was, talking about our feelings are great. I mean, I love telling about my feelings. It's helped me a great deal to understand who I'm doing, and it lets other people know how I'm feeling too. Instead of walking around, because, for like 20 some years, I just walked around as an angry dude, and I really wasn't. I was just scared.
My family just thought I disconnected.
I was sad.
Yeah. I was disconnected. My family's like, you just don't come around. You don't do this. You don't do that. And then after I took my mom to her first TAPS event, she kind of sat me down, and she was like you could tell that it really did help her understand like what I was going through, and why what she called disconnected was my way of protecting myself. So
and the feelings, I think it's always funny, if we all talked about our feelings, it would be a way better place. I was guilty of it for a long time. Be like, I don't have time to hear about your feelings, because I couldn't address my own feelings. But now I'm all about feelings. I'm all about the feelings wheel.
The feelings wheel. Okay.
The feelings wheel. I'm going to share with everybody. It's a very powerful tool. I love it. I mean, when I literally have sat in the office and been like, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Let's just look at the wheel and
maybe I'll bring that to maybe we'll bring that to our next.
Well, I mean, it's like we talked about in our men's group, that we might start off that, because it kind of gauges where you're at, just where you're at as a person right now. I mean, there's a lot of feelings that are going on. There's stuff there's a feeling that's running through the back. You're like, the people aren't seeing. that, when we can address it, it kind of explains a lot of what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling anxious.
Or you can also start on the feeling was you were angry, but once you start talking, you're like, I really wasn't angry. I was.
Well, the powerful feeling was the powerful feelings wheel that I'm talking about. Is like, but there's two parts of it. There's like, I think what everybody addresses when we talk about feelings are sometimes when you're like, it's important to realize for sometimes I can have feelings where my feelings are not being met.
Right.
But at the same time, my feelings are being met in the same time, in the same moment.
Absolutely.
But like a lot of times we just want to focus on the negative ones that are like, so like when I do it, like, it's interesting when I have it that I usually start off with, if I'm doing, I'm always looking at how my feelings aren't being met, but then I quickly try to be thankful for where my feelings are being met. You know what I mean? And I try to always end on like,
that's a great
what's
coping.
a positive way to do it. Yeah, because I mean, most people only think about the negative emotion. There's a lot of things that are going on. I mean, but being able to that's important. I mean, and as adults, we have to show kids that that's okay.
Right.
Right. And that's the one thing I look back in my life. I was not like that. That's not how I grew up. That's not how I raised my kids. It would just be like, suck it up and drive on.
Yeah.
Like right now I'm feeling angry. Right? I'm really angry right now. As part of this feeling, you have you learn about the dogs. Everyone can hear the dogs right now. But I do really appreciate that. Look at it as being able to share your feelings. I'm glad you are able to share your feelings now that you're not holding those in anymore, that you're not, and I'm always here to chat. I mean, and is there like, so we'll get moving along here, but and close it up. But are there organizational meetups for like the Gold Star families, for TAPS, like regionally? How can someone like volunteer for something like that?
So they would go to the taps.org website, which I can give you the website so you can, and they post on there. There's coffee meetups, but for like the families, there's definitely regionals. I think they're actually, they just finished one. I can't remember. During the summer and during football season, I really can't go attend right now. But normally they have one in different regions. So the last one I attended was the national, which is always held Memorial Day weekend. So Memorial Day weekend is our big event. Sometimes we've had at least over 500 children show up, and it's always fun trying to chase them around. This year was a little bit smaller, but you can go onto their website and you could find different ways to volunteer, different ways to maybe even start a small meetup in your town. Also, if you are a surviving family, there is resources, education benefits. I mean, they do a really good job of having all their resources. And then there's also, if you ever call the hotline, you will actually talk to somebody. You will talk to a live person. Like, you will not get pushed around. You will talk to another survivor that is ready to help and ready to point you in the right direction. So they're all, I mean, it's a busy page, but when you go to volunteer, it takes you directly to different events and different resources.
Yeah, we have a post that's going to come up here. It's probably already up, that talks about that. So if you're listening, you can get on that. And like I said before, if you want to help out, that's a great way. If you really want to show support towards survivors, is to volunteer. It's a big impact. There's a lot of ways to volunteer for this. And like I said before, we can't forget about the current legislation that's out there. Keep pushing it. And if you really want to help, it's in session, right? It's in Congress right now. We just need to keep, if you haven't written your congressman about it, absolutely. I'm gonna actually write a letter here this week to this weekend to send it myself, because I think it's super important that everybody understand how we really feel about that and what needs to happen. That we can't keep, just can't get pushed.
And there's advocacy. There's an advocacy tab on there as well. And this year it'll be the 4th annual. The survivors advocates, and they go up to Capitol Hill and we meet with different representatives and we kind of tell them our story. So that'll be happening in September. And I want to say it's the 4th annual. Don't quote me, but I think it's the 4th annual. I've been to 2, but it's always an experience, because just like, you were saying, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. Yeah. When you sit there and you tell, because most of the time you meet with their staff and you're telling them your story and they're like, I had no idea. Like, I had no clue. You start finding less and less people that don't know, But in the beginning, when we would go and have these conversations, they'd be like, I had no idea this was a thing. Like, if you get married 55, like,
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Well, this is your story, your episode. So is there anything else that we missed you want to talk about before we close it up?
No, I think you did great.
Hey, you did wonderful yourself. Thank you for
thank you for having me, and thank you for being patient.
We had to reschedule, a couple reschedules. It's no big deal. We're patient. I got a little worried. I had to give you a little tough love.
Yes.
I was like, I'm not hearing from you. I need some tough love here. I need to know if she's coming or not. But
it's in the middle of the summer, so it's one of those where work and the reserves and all this other stuff. But I had it on my calendar. I'm missing this.
And I appreciate you getting come up here. And I do want to thank you on behalf of it's a little bit different episode that we've had before. So I do want to thank you for sharing your this deep heartfelt story that you have. There's a lot of personal things you shared today, and I'm very thankful that you feel safe enough to do that here, and I really appreciate you doing that. Your willingness to speak about love loss, all the things that were going on, all the emotions in between that are just they've touched me to the core, and I really thank you for being able to do that, and it's just amazing to see how you've honored Ray's life, his sacrifice, and by continue to speak about him, can begin to get involved with helping others through organizations like TAPS and the Gary Sinise Foundation, but also at the same time you continue your service to the country. So I thank you for that as well.
Thank you.
It's very powerful. So I'll get to the part of the episode that I like the least. Tonight, we're going to honor a service member who unfortunately took his life. Tonight, we honor U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major Chad Allen Miller, 50 years old. Chad took his life on June 20th, 2025 in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Chad was born on July 13th, 1974 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. After graduating high school, Chad enlisted in the United States Army in 1992. In 2001, Chad became a Green Beret and served with the 1st Special Forces Group. Chad later served as the Command Sergeant Major of the 2nd Battalion, 2nd Warfare Training Group. Throughout his career, Chad deployed to numerous countries. Following 30 years of service, Chad continued his life of service by working with the U.S. SOCOM Warrior Care Program and later becoming Director of Programs for the Honor Foundation in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Chad was passionate about supporting soldiers transitioning from military to civilian life. Chad found immense joy in time spent with his family, whether attending church, golfing, or watching movies. Chad enjoyed watching the Carolina Hurricanes, Green Bay Packers, and professional golf. He had a love of Harley-Davidson motorcycles and a remarkable talent for working with his hands and can fix just about anything. Chad is survived by his wife, Rachel, daughters Hannah, Emma, and Lacey, sons Evan and Nate, parents Greg and Sandra, sisters Jennifer, Teresa, his in-laws Christine and Jeff, best friend Kurt, and numerous other relatives, teammates, and friends. And please, if you or someone you know is in crisis and might be considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Line at 988 or 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255 or chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. So as easy as it's also was very difficult to find quotes, some good quotes for Gold Star quotes, but I found the one I posted the one on your announcement page, which I thought was pretty powerful, from Jane Horton. But another one's actually I found was from Master Sergeant Jennifer Ballou, who's actually here in the Columbus area. She lost her husband as well, but she's I've actually met her. We've been trying to get her on the podcast. She just wrote a book, but I found a quote from her. It said, "Becoming a Gold Star spouse is not something I ever asked for, but it is a description that I will always carry with me honorably. Thank you for remembering the many other men and women who gave their lives while serving our great nation, and thank you for taking the time today to honor and recognize their spouses who also have given so very much." So thought that was a
very
way
powerful
to describe what she did. I can't believe I messed up the ending with there, but
okay.
I think she gave that speech. It's in an article from the local Columbus newspaper. So I did want to end with one final quote from Seneca. That had to do with loss. It said, "To lose a friend is the greatest of all evils, but endeavor rather to rejoice that you possessed him than to mourn his loss." And I thought that's something I take to heart about how I look at life now with the people that I've lost, or just that they had them in my life instead of focusing on them being gone. So
Absolutely.
hope that helps you with, I think you feel the same way about right now. And again, I want to thank you for being so open and honest, coming on and making the trip up here and seeing
Thank
us.
you for
And
having me.
yeah, you're welcome. Well, this concludes episode 99. We'll see everybody in a couple weeks, or maybe a little bit longer, as we plan for the big 100th episode. We might have to adjust it. So Nick, I'll be giving you a call here next couple of days or so. But this has been episode 99 of Reports with Patriots. Until next time, be kind to yourself, honor the stories of our veterans, and remember, when you sit down with a Patriot, the conversation is different. Have a great night.